We are looking at the leaders on the Col de la Colombière, and we're looking now of the King of the Mountains, and he's not in the lead. He's been dropped by the 12-man breakaway here. Jerome Pinot in trouble, and we've only just started the climb.
Well, this is the Col de la Madeleine that the riders are going at here. There's a bit of an incident at the back here. Now, this very often happens, and that's why you want to ride at the front end of the main field. This is Euskaltel-Euskadi. They've got some big problems here. This is Ivan Velakosco, and up alongside him, looking after him, is his teammate Alan Perez.
Yeah, I think there was obviously a crash there. The camera's rushing back because Kevin de Weerts was the quick-step rider who slipped away and pushed off by that lady spectator. But it looks as though the Euskaltel boys had a bit of a collision there. Back to the leaders now. Cadel Evans of Australia riding today in yellow. His first day as leader of the Tour de France this year. He's done it before. His team so far today, BMC, have been magnificent, and they've still got two men on the front right now.
Well, I wasn't too surprised to see the departure of Jérôme Pinot from this leading group, Phil, because he's not really the kind of climber of the ilk of some of these men we're looking at. Jose Ivan Gutierrez is really pedaling out a very hard tempo at the front here because he's trying to conserve as much time as possible for the man sitting right behind him, Luis Leon Sanchez. Watch out for Anthony Charteau over on the left-hand side in the pale blue. He's a man from B-Box Telecom, former winner of the Tour de Langkawi, and he laid the foundations for that victory on the slopes of the tea-growing area of Malaysia, the Cameron Highlands.
Well, Gutierrez there has been joined here by Ryan Taramay, who got up to the breakaway with Damiano Cunego a long time ago now, but he's also cracked. And whereas Pinot's keeping his rhythm, Taramay's an Estonian, has decided he can't go with it, and he's supposedly quite a good climber, but he's gone very early on the Colombière. Probably hurt himself. It was a long chase with Damiano Cunego to reach the leaders, and it's Freundlinger has also gone here.
Well, these guys are really being damned out of the back of the group because of the tempo being led here by Jose Ivan Gutierrez. In the main field behind, the first part of this climb, Phil, is a fairly steady tempo at around about 6.5%. There's a flat section between 10 and 13 kilometers. If anybody is going to try and attack, I would think they'll wait till the last 4 or 5 kilometers, because in that last 4 or 5 kilometers, there's a couple of points where the race actually sticks up to 10%. Now, that would suit somebody like Alberto Contador, who needs a steep gradient to launch his scintillating attacks.
And let's remind ourselves too that Luis Leon Sanchez, he's the second rider in our picture here in the black, with a lead of 6:16 and an overnight deficit of 5:03. He now leads this race by 1:13 on the road. That's what he would like if he were already at the finishing line. Fabian Cancellara, the first day winner in Rotterdam, is also unhitching at the back of the peloton now. He'll just make his way up to the top. But he's got to the last climb of the day, so there's no fear of elimination hanging over his head as he makes his way up the I keep saying the Colombière, up the Col de la Madeleine.
Well, there's so many climbs on today's stage. The Col de la Colombière was the first big climb of the day, and that was after just 46 kilometers of racing. After that it was the Aravis, then the Cézanne. Now we're very much on the foothill here of the Col de la Madeleine. And actually there you can see the damage that's being done by BMC, and they are proving to rise to the occasion for their leader, Cadel Evans, because that was Alessandro Balan on the front end of the group there, doing a lot of the pacemaking. A very experienced professional bike rider. He really is a bike rider specialized at one-day racing. He's in the past been a winner of the Tour of Flanders and the World Championships a couple of years ago, back in 2008. So he's now turning himself over to be a super elite domestique for Cadel Evans, and he's doing some fair damage at that main field.
But it's going to have to, they're going to have to keep a good tempo back there now. That Cadel will not want to lose his jersey today. I feel sure of that, because if he can go over today, he could be in yellow right through till we get to the Pyrenees next week, and he'll be very conscious of that. So good pacemaking. It's the leaders have quickly thinned out. Freundlinger here along with Jerome Pinot. They will try to continue to get some points for the King of the Mountains competition, but the peloton, still a bit of work to do, but we'll see how this climb progresses, because we're on these slopes, I'm afraid, for quite a long time today. This is the big one of the Tour. Big fast tempo making by the peloton now as they continue to climb. The gap is still 6 minutes and 18 seconds to the leaders, but take a look at these faces, Paul, and Evans looks good at the moment. There's Andy Schleck in white, but already gone from this lead group. We have seen George Hincapie come off the front. Geraint Thomas has just been dropped as well, the young Welsh rider. It's now got very fast, very early.
Yeah, this is Jan Ibrahimovic, and you get an indication of how fast it is, because this is the man who about a month ago won the Criterium de Dauphiné, and this is Mick Rogers now. That's not a good sign to see Mick Rogers going back through the cars.
That is not a good sign at all, because Mick Rogers was riding high. He was up into the top 10 just, and I thought he might have moved up a bit more today, but no, he has now gone off the back, and that was Edvard Boysenhagen from Sky, who's also dropped away.
Well, he's having a very tough apprenticeship here, Phil, and I think obviously Saxo Bank have decided, Phil, that every mountain stage they're going to go out and they're going to hammer Alberto Contador if they can, because if Andy Schleck wants to win this race, I reckon he needs to have about a 3-minute buffer over Alberto Contador before the final time trial, because we all know, and it's no means of disrespect, Andy Schleck cannot ride a time trial yet.
And that can be the only reason, because look at the brilliant riding here by Chris Anker Sorensen. He has been told to ride as fast as he can for as long as he can and just see what damage he does. He's not expected to be up there by the end of the day. And Schleck is following and doesn't look out of breath. And now we've got an attack from and he said, it's not
Vinokurov.
It's Vinokurov of Astana. And now they're going to have to alter their tactics again.
Well, Phil, I have to say, when you said to me this morning, watch out for Alexander Vinokurov, I thought you'd lost your mind. But you were right. It's a great tactical move. Takes the pressure away from Team Astana, and it forces everybody else to chase.
Well, they've got this reverse tactic now. Contador can say, well, boys, if you want him, go and get him. I'm going to watch Cadel Evans and Andy Schleck. And Alexander Vinokurov, who has done good rides in this part of the world before, is now trying to reach those leaders. Boy, he's got a bridge 5 minutes, 11 seconds. But they're pulling it back very, very quickly because of this tempo.
No, they will. But what this is going to do, Phil, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the other teams to actually chase and take the pressure away from Team Astana. Vinokurov started the day in 15th place overall, looking for just over 3 minutes. While you can see the leading group now, they really have tended to slow down a fraction, and that's because this is an extremely long climb. They're looking to pretty close to an hour's ascent to get to the top. For some of the climbers, for some of the non-climbers at the back, they'll probably be going up this climb for an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, 3 riders on the same team. Case Depart, a Frenchman, and 2 Spanish riders are setting the pace here. They've got the most to gain. Number 161 has got the most to gain, because that is Luis Leon Sanchez. But now the truce has gone in the main pack. There is the winner of 2008, number 91. That is Carlos Sastre, who's there. Juan Antonio Fletcher is the Sky rider just behind, number 34.
Sylvain Chavanel is still in this group as well, so he's obviously recovered after the rest day. The man who's worn the yellow jersey on 2 occasions in the Tour de France this year and won himself 2 stage victories, and he's made no bones about the fact, Phil, that he likes to leave this Tour de France with 3 stage wins under his belt.
Good for him. Once you start winning, it seems to come a little bit more natural, I think. Just look at the steepness of these hairpin bends that lifts this mountain up just a notch higher now. 3, 6, 8 riders left of the original 12 men here.
It's great to see Christophe Moreau in the group too, the rider, the big tall rider there from Case d'Epargne, 39 years of age, and he's actually the man setting the tempo there. He wears number 166. He will retire from the sport at the end of this season. I think he turned professional, Phil, back in 1996, so he's certainly been around for quite a while.
Well, he has. I remember him winning the Dunkirk prologue of the Tour de France, and that was quite a long time ago. When he was down there, 2001. It's the only time he's ever won a stage of the Tour de France, but this is his 15th Tour, which is a terrific record. But he didn't call the press conference yesterday to announce the time to give up was just around the corner.
Well, Team BMC have not given up at all. We're just looking there at Ivan Basso riding alongside number 21, Lance Armstrong. At the front of the group in second position, you might just have noticed the Australian Matty Lloyd was riding well. He was the winner of the King of the Mountains in the Giro d'Italia in the early part of this season, and I think he's looking to ride extremely well later on in this tour.
Well, he's waited for the big mountains, and he's tried in the big mountains. He failed certainly on the road to Avoriaz. He actually finished with Lance Armstrong's little select group some 10 minutes behind, but things will change later on.
He's riding for his teammate there just behind him, Jürgen van den Broek, the other rider in the Omega Pharma Lotto jersey there. 4th place overall, which is one of the best Belgian performances for many, many years. But this man has certainly taken the bull by the horns, and he's putting the pressure on everybody else in the Tour de France this afternoon. Alexander Vinokurov.
Yes, you can see how narrow this road is now, but when you're on your own it probably feels quite wide. But it's a great climb if you've got the legs to get away because you're in the trees. It's a wooded climb and you're always changing direction. And this boy has a plan today to take the pressure off Alberto Contador, his team leader. He tried it 2 days ago on the road to Avoriaz, and he did so much damage on the Ramos, he actually waited and went back into the pack in case Alberto Contador got into trouble.
I think he probably would have discussed this with Alberto Contador before he made that move, just to make sure that his teammate and team leader was in a good shape to take the pressure of a chase behind him. BMC still doing a good job. Cadel Evans is comfortably in that group. He doesn't really need to worry too much about Alexander Vinokourov. He started the day 3 minutes behind him in the overall standings. What Cadel Evans has to do, he has to be very careful and decide which riders he feels he needs to chase down. And of course, the man who we will definitely chase down is Alberto Contador. And the other rider, I think, is obviously Andy Schleck.
Well, at the moment, a lot of work being done here. Still trying just to hang on a little bit longer, the team of BMC, to keep Cadel Evans in with a good chance. They've ridden a very good race today for them. Red number being worn there by Mario Ertz, who is the most aggressive rider on the road to Avoriaz.
Well, Sylvain Chavanel that we're looking at here is certainly a changed man in this year's Tour de France. So bear in mind that in the early part of this year, in the month of April, he had a very nasty crash, fractured his skull and was in a coma, an induced coma, for a couple of days before coming out of that and then having to fight his way back to the top of the sport.
Well, they're still ahead. The break is thinning out, though, and this man who has left the side of Alberto Contador, Alexander Vinokourov, is trying to race across the gap to the leaders. This rider with him was going the other way a moment ago. He was coming down from the breakaway. He seems to have found momentarily at least some strength to get onto the back wheel of Vinokourov. I doubt very much that Taramay will be able to help him.
Well, I don't think so. He'll be happy to have a bit of slipstreaming and maybe survive for a fraction longer. But what you can see this has done, it's actually put a bit of pressure onto the other teams. And there, Vinokourov has decided, no, you mate, you're not going to stay with me here this afternoon. I'm off on my own because I'm off on a mission this afternoon. He's 4.5 minutes down on the 8-man leading group. So already he's bridged 2 minutes of the gap that they had at the start of the climb.
Well, there's the long, lonely road of the Col de la Madeleine. And now Vinokourov is clear of the chase and he's off in search of the crumbling breakaway. But the man who's looking to be doing very well is Gutierrez, who's setting the pace up there. When we get pictures, we'll show you. And he's trying now to set up a springboard here for Luis Leon Sanchez to win the day.
Well, we're halfway up the Col de la Madeleine, and once we go over the top, there's around about a 30-kilometer descent down into the valley road before. But at the front of the race, Jose Ivan Gutierrez is pulling himself inside out for the team, pulling himself inside out for his own teammate, the man who sits there in third place, Luis Leon Sanchez, who we all believe is an extremely talented bike rider. And he could be looking at dragging himself up to a podium position at the end of the day.
He certainly could. Now, Gutierrez here wears the red jersey of the champion of Spain, but he's very much on the same team as these two boys in black. This is now Christophe Moreau. Best ever tour for him, 4th in 2000. He won the prologue in Dunkirk a few years ago now. And announced his retirement from the sport yesterday, 39 years of age, and he's riding with this breakaway on the steepest climb of the Alps this year. Quite unbelievable, that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned him winning the prologue in Dunkirk, for that I think was in 2001, and actually he was in 4th place overall when the race went down into the Pyrenees on the 12th stage, and he had to abandon. And I remember the images seeing him sitting at the side of the road in tears.
Yep. He's been a very up and a down rider as far as form goes, but he looks as though he's found his legs for this year. There's the peloton. Look how small that is now.
Yeah, quite strange as well with Moreau, because he had a little bit of difficulty towards the end of his career, and a lot of the French teams were not too keen to keep him on board. And I think that's why he jumped across to Team Case d'Epargne just during the winter transfer season, and I think he's paying them back for having the confidence in today.
They like to have a couple of French riders on the squad because although the team is sponsored and registered in Spain, it's a French bank. So they like to see a couple of Frenchmen on the squad.
Well, here's a man who could produce a climb later on. Number 85 there, John Gadret. I remember him starting to ride extremely well in the Giro d'Italia a couple of seasons ago, and we thought this is going to be the next new climber from France. He's had a very quiet year or so since then, but now a lot of people are starting to utter the name John Gadret as a possible favourite to do something on one of the mountain stages.
You may recall, if you were watching the 3rd stage with us when the race went across northern France and all of those cobblestones early on, it was John Gadret who Stopped by to kiss his wife and kids goodbye and say I'll see you in Paris. And well, can't believe that's over a week ago already.
Finished 13th overall in the Giro d'Italia this year and 18th overall 2 years ago in the Vuelta a España. So he certainly is a man who knows how to climb. Hats off, Phil, to BMC. I thought they would crumble very quickly on the early kilometres of the Col de la Colombière, Col de la Madeleine.
I've started you on
Thank
it now.
you very much.
Sorry, yep.
The Madeleine, and they certainly, I think, are rallying around the yellow jersey, while what they are trying to do is pull themselves back to this group. But look at the way Jose Ivan Gutierrez in the Spanish national jersey on the front here is really hurting himself to try and put pressure on the whole of the Tour de France this afternoon.
He's hurting himself to his limit. He will do this until he can do it no more, and then he will just drop away and hope he gets home perhaps before the chase comes in. But he's doing it for one reason only, and that's try to protect Luis Leon Sanchez. There's Jerome Pino that's just down there in the polka dot jersey. He was dropped very early on the climb, and he's obviously not going to make any progress. At the moment, he's still in the points for the King of the Mountains competition, but he won't be if Vinokurov can get by him very shortly. Another man here just peeping in the picture in the white crash helmet is Jens Voigt. He's also riding very strongly up the climbs today.
Yeah, well, the presence of Jens Voigt in this group really is to hope that if they get caught later on by Andy Schleck, that he will be able to assist his teammate for a kilometre or so. But for the moment, that's not looking like being the case, because these guys are still conserving a huge chunk of their advantage. Their advantage over the Cadel-Evans group, Phil, is still 5 minutes and 21 seconds. And that's all because of the work that's been done by Gutierrez on the front of the group.
And the only good news there is that Luis Leon Sanchez now is only 18 seconds to the good in his hunt for the yellow jersey. So the team has ridden pretty well in the peloton to limit their losses. It's just going to bring another man very much into the reckoning for the days ahead if this breakaway stays away.
Well, Jerome Pino has still built himself a pretty big advantage in the King of the Mountains competition, but watch out for Christophe Moreau, who was chipping away there and finished second to him on every other occasion, because there are 30 points for the top of the climb here. Because no, there are more than 30 points. There are 40 points, because this is a double classification for the last climb of the day. Gutierrez has done his job. He's now been dropped. Yeah,
that's what had to happen sooner or later. He raced to the limit for as long as he could. He's still left Moreau up there to look after Sanchez. Now he's just got to struggle and drag himself up this climb, and that is not easy to do now. With the pressures off him, he'll ride at his own pace as best he can. That's it for me. Nice smile, well done. Jose Ivan Gutierrez won the Championship of Spain the week before the Tour de France started, and now he's setting it up there for his teammate Sanchez to pay off the big bill and try and win the stage. That's for sure today. This is the remnants now of the breakaway as they still remain under pressure. The latest man to be dropped here. No, this is Chris Anker-Sorensen. We've gone further back down at the moment.
Well, he made that big tempo, obviously trying to decimate the main field and try and isolate as many people as possible. That's Mick Rogers there. Mick's having a very difficult time on the Col de la Madeleine. He started the day in 10th place in the overall standings, the leader of Team HTC Columbia for the overall standings. And here he's trying to ride himself back in and make sure that he doesn't lose too much time.
Pacemaking up front here continues. Look at the face. Matthew Lloyd, the Australian climber, still in here for the new style of Belgian cycling, Jurgen van den Broek. That's Van den Broek on third wheel at the moment. Levi Leipheimer is holding it. He's the new leader now of the Radio Shack team. With a wide open mouth too is Alberto Contador. This group's down to about 30 men.
This is the youngster now on Saxo Bank, riding his first Tour de France, a full sang, and he's taken up the tempo that was dished out first of all by Chris Anker-Sorensen. That's Meglinski in second position for Team Astana, while Christophe Lemavelle, I'm not quite sure where he is. Always difficult in the mountains to keep a tag on who's riding well. This is the Frenchman who was the best Frenchman in the Tour de France last year. So, slipping back the fraction. I think, in fact, it looks as if Christophe Lemavelle is not having an easy time either.
No, best placed Frenchman last year in the Tour de France. This is Sipsov, who's gone off the back. There's the British support there for Bradley Wiggins. This is the man with the easy job, the referee, just seeing everybody keeps in order and behaves himself. Now, Chris Horner, and he's also in trouble. And we thought Chris was going a little bit stronger than that.
The Spanish rider from Omega Pharma Lotto, that's Daniel Moreno going backwards. It's obviously doing a lot of damage now. It's the turn of Matty Lloyd as well.
Pacemaking by Matty Lloyd is done. He's now left his man in a very good position, though, Jurgen van den Broek. He's given him a lot of effort. 9 kilometres to the top, over 5 miles to climb, and these are for the leaders. And it's Christophe Moreau setting the pace for Luis Leon Sanchez. At the moment, Paul, there's 3 likely winners for me in here, and it's Sanchez, Cunego on the right, and Cassar on the back there.
Yeah, but there's still a big battle going on behind her. They're holding on to a good chunk of their advantage. They're still 4.5 minutes ahead of Alexander Vinokourov. But going back to the yellow jersey group of Cadel Evans, Phil, it's still hanging in there at around about the 5-minute mark. So they're not pulling back this breakaway quite as easily as they thought. And this man, the former winner of the Tour de France, Carlos Sastre, he looks like he's done.
Well, he was pleased with his first day in the Alps when on the way to Avoriaz, but today is another day here, and he's cooling himself down. It is very, very hot on the mountain today, and he has been distanced by the peloton. So the winner of 2 years ago is in no fit shape now, and it's getting worse here because this is Ryder Heyerdahl, who was also high up in the overall standings. He's slowly been dropping away from 4th in the Tour de France. The Canadian now is finding this pace extremely hard. But amazingly, Lance Armstrong is still here, Paul, and we always said the only reason he's lost so much time is his bad luck, because we've always felt he's had good condition for this race.
Well, I thought he did have good condition, but, you know, I think all of the bad luck that he never had from 1999 to 2005 was thrown at him 2 days ago. So that's what's pushed him way down in the overall standings, and he'll do whatever he can now to look after the interests of Levi Leipheimer. Leipheimer was looking comfortable there, but Christophe Moreau is doing a phenomenal job here. Well, there's a sign at the side of the road for Jens Voigt. Well, we can tell those people Jens won't be too far from getting to you.
This is the steady progress, but it's steady and not ripping at the leaders at the moment for Alexander Vinokourov. The yellow jersey, has been a little shuffle at the front. Now, what's Cadel Evans doing this far down here? In fact, riders starting to move around Cadel Evans. Now, is Cadel Evans having a bad day?
Well, he shouldn't be sitting there, you know, Phil, because I think he's going off the wheel here.
He's going. Cadel Evans is under pressure here on the climb, and he's still quite a long way from the top.
Well, he doesn't need to panic at the moment. He just needs to stay in contact with this group, ride at his own pace, but he shouldn't be riding that far down the line, certainly on the slopes of this climb, because we've still got a long way to go to the top. I make it still around about 10 kilometres to the summit of this climb. Turning the legs quite nicely, gets back onto the tail end of this group. The tempo being done at the front end of the race is actually being done by Team Astana now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see, well, this is Iglinski on the front, followed by Daniel Navarro, and also in there Sammy Sanchez just over to the far side there in the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi. Sanchez has got some pretty good form this afternoon. Now, if there is any chance that Cadel Evans falters here, the next man to inherit the yellow jersey will in fact be Andy Schleck, who rides for Team Saxo Bank. Well, Christophe Moreau's done his job for Luis Leon Sanchez, and he now is just going to have to try and survive to the top of this climb. Well, there's only 4 riders remain at the front end of the group now. Luis Leon Sanchez, Damiano Cunego, Anthony Charteau, and Sandy Cassar. Well, it sounds that the race radio is now cracking. This is Alexander Vinokourov is now back with the main field, and Cadel Evans has cracked in the yellow jersey here. Now, this is a massive surprise. His team has done a great job for him this afternoon, and he has faltered. But there's still a lot of riders left in that group, and Evans cannot follow.
And look at this now. The reason Cadel Evans has cracked big time is they've spotted the weakness, and the pace has been lifted by Astana.
Well, Phil, the team obviously believed in him. They did all of the pacemaking, but he's obviously having a bad day. I've told you so many times throughout history that there's always a strange reaction to the body the day after a rest day, and I wonder if that's what it is for this man, Cadel Evans. He is faltered, and he's left so many other riders in front of him. He must be having just one of those days which the French call un journée sans, a day with nothing left in your body.
It's happened before when he led the Giro d'Italia, and he lost his jersey the next day in that as well. He blamed hunger then. There's the King of the Mountains caught now, Jerome Fino. But this is a good ride by Levi. Levi is locked into Astana and following them well. And amazingly, Lance Armstrong is in what is now becoming a very elite group here. It only goes to prove that Armstrong is where he is because of bad luck and not bad form.
Yeah, it's a pity that, Phil, that he had so much bad luck to go down the overall standings, but this is making the race a much more wide open race. Luis Leon Sanchez now has only got 2 guys left with him, Cunego, and the other rider is Anthony Charteau. This is Team Astana now really starting to light up the road. In fact, Armstrong has disappeared from this group. He's popped off the back.
So Armstrong is also cracked now as he starts to fall away. But the story of the day, the yellow jersey in desperate difficulties here. That's Tirolongo, the climb of Mastana, who contributed to the demise of Evans. Before he sacrificed his own chances, he's dropped back as well.
Well, the only thing Evans can do now, they've got rid of Levi Leipheimer. He's disappeared now. There is Contador in second position. Right behind him, though, is Andy Schleck, and Sammy Sanchez is trying to come across in the orange jersey.
The only man that Contador is said to fear is right on his back wheel, the white jersey of Andy Schleck. Schleck says, I want yellow. Well, he's about to receive it now because he's the next candidate if Evans drops.
Well, that's the important thing to note. He started the day 20 seconds adrift at Andy Schleck, and he looks comfortable here on the wheel of Alberto Contador, who's now starting to get that climbing style of his, trying to come across the gap there in the orange is Sammy Sanchez. He's in difficulty, Olympic champion from Beijing. He was the man who finished second. There's a move by Schleck.
Oh, maybe he's reacting to the criticism of Avoriaz when they said he should have attacked a long way out from the finish and got his time. This time he's giving it a go. He's finding out just how strong is Alberto Contador.
Well, that's a great move, but he's going to have to throw a little bit more at Alberto Contador if he wants to get rid of him. Contador now is on the defensive this afternoon. This is man against man. Armstrong is further down the road. He's riding alongside Ivan Basso, number 41 there, but it's still not a bad performance by Armstrong. But further down the slopes, the man who started the day in the yellow jersey, Cadel Evans, is having the worst day of his tour so far.
What's going on? That now they've slowed down because they've answered each other's attacks. Sanchez is coming back to them, looks at them, wonders what is going on. These 2 top climbers, you know, they might implode if they keep on attacking each other like this.
Well, Andy Schleck will keep attacking. He's a kind of rider who's got the change of rate that Alberto Contador has as well, and it's like looking back to the Mont Ventoux last year when Andy Schleck kept attacking and slowing down, attacking and slowing down. So we're now looking at a fairly serious group. Sammy Sanchez, Andy Schleck and Alberto Contador, but look what it's done to the rest of the field.
I've just got the feeling that little group immediately behind might take advantage of this slowing down because they're waiting to try and sock it to them again by the looks of it. Sanchez looking to one way. Contador, I just have that feeling also, Paul, he's not as good as he was last year.
Well, it's not very often that you see him put into difficulty. He was up against the ropes for a few moments there. Remember what I said, the steepest part of this climb, Phil, comes at around about 4 kilometres to go to the summit. So if Andy Schleck thinks he's got anything in his legs, it's that gradient there that he needs to use.
Vinokurov, who was up the road, is now down through to this group here and being followed with Lance Armstrong. This is Sipsov. Matthew Lloyd is here. This is the yellow jersey group now, and when you're in the lead, you've got to do all the work yourself. And there's an attack again, and straight after him comes Contador. If he locks onto the wheel, Schleck will ease again and wait again. But where did Sanchez go?
Well, Sanchez popped because of that acceleration. He is at the limit of his ability there. What he will just try and do is slow down. Just look at this acceleration again. Andy Schleck just goes again from the front. That's a tough thing to do. And Contador's really having to dig deep there, Phil, to try and stay in the slipstream of the Luxembourger.
Well, there's no doubt now where the rivalry is in this Tour de France.
And he's going again.
Thought he's gone yet again, but how many times can you do this? Because he's giving Contador a taste of his own medicine here. Contador is the man that usually can accelerate like this, not Andy Schleck. Contador has always said he's worried about the white jersey. Well, he's going to have to keep him right there or lose the Tour de France, I think.
Well, the thing is, Andy Schleck, Phil, has to attack. He needs time. Alberto Contador can actually ride on the defensive because he knows if it goes down to the situation that is in at the moment, the time trial will smile to his advantage. And Schleck knows that too. He knows he's got to get time. This is a long climb that we're going up, Phil, here. We've still got around about 7 kilometres or so to get to the summit. And bear in mind, following the summit, there's a very dangerous long descent down into the valley below. The descent is about 18 miles.
Here we go again, and another one. But he's racing him from the front. He's almost inviting him to chase his back wheel. Contador just concentrating on the back brakes of Schleck's saddle. and he just holds that wheel. He's not under too much pressure right now, but Schleck this time is going to hurt him a bit more.
Well, he's hurting him a bit more, but Contador's looking more and more comfortable in his response to these attacks. The best thing to do really would be for Schleck to go into second position and try and get the jump on Contador, but I don't think he's able to do that because Contador is playing a very wily game.
Well, we still have 6 kilometres to climb. Now, our cameras are staying with the battle here for leadership of the Tour de France, and we're not going back up with the leaders who are actually on the road at the moment and are down to 3. Luis Leon Sanchez, Sandy Cassar, and I've forgotten the third one already. My mind's gone blank. There's 3 of them. Thank you, Chateau. As they're up there at the front at the moment. But these two now, looking at our computers here, are closing in all of the time. Evans has now lost, according to the computer, 2 minutes.
That is a huge chunk of time, but what he needs to do, Phil, is not to panic. It's no good trying to follow these guys because he doesn't have that acceleration. He needs to get into his mind, the frame of mind to ride sensibly, to try and limit his losses. Don't forget, Cadel Evans comes from a background of being a brilliant mountain biker, so he could find himself pulling back a little bit of that time on the descent.
Well, at the moment there are 4 leaders now because Chateau has got back up with Cunego and Sanchez and Sandy Cassar. Then these are the next 2 riders on the road right now. Everybody else has been swept away. Sanchez, he's really struggling, but he's sticking in there. He almost gets on every time, and then Schleck attacks and he goes off again.
Yeah, well, watch out for Sanchez though, Phil, because although he can't match these massive accelerations of Contador and Schleck, he can go downhill probably better than any other bike rider in the main field, and he will use the advantage of the descent. If he's 30 or 40 seconds behind at the top of the climb, he will go down that descent like a man possessed.
Life up front. These are the 4 leaders, the survivors of the original 12, all blown away on the climb of the Col de la Madeleine. The manager there telling him exactly what's to come, how far to go. Once over the top, it's 32 kilometres of downhill and flat-out racing. These boys can fly there. Andy Schleck doesn't want any more drinks as they continue to go here.
Contador here, that little sign there, Phil, was right. Let's work together, because Contador is actually concerned about Sammy Sanchez. So he's just said to Andy Schleck, come on, let's work together. Let's start to build into this situation.
Here's Gutierrez now taking a good look, and congratulations, and a drink from a non-teammate there comes from Gutierrez. That's interesting. He's a teammate to Luis Leon Sanchez up front. Looking into the eyes of the man who is at the head of the leading group on the Col de la Madeleine. He's got about 3.5, 4 kilometres to climb to the summit. Luis Leon Sanchez racing for the yellow jersey and the stage win, but the reaction now. Jens Voigt was with the break. He's fallen back, and he's now giving his last amount of strength to his teammate in white, Andy Schleck. There's a select group behind these containing even Basser. There they are. As they're tagged onto the back now, Vinokourov. In here too is Lance Armstrong. Jurgen van den Broek, the Belgian, but sadly to say, there is no Bradley Wiggins here.
Well, just catching now Jérôme Pinault as he starts to slip backwards. Cadel Evans is getting into a little bit more of a rhythm now. As I said, Philly, he mustn't panic on a situation like this. You can have a bad day any time during the Tour de France, but followed by the bad days, you can have good ones as well. And he may well be able to pull himself back into this race further down the road. Still recovering at the back, just in the convoy of cars there, is Sammy Sanchez. He can't go as quickly as these guys when they accelerate like maniacs on the slopes of these climbs, but he has got good form and he's pegging them back slowly but surely.
Well, he'll take the chance. The pace has dropped a little bit because poor old Jens hasn't got much left in the tank now. He is at the limit after that long breakaway, and it's giving Contador a chance to go in his lowest gear and keep up a high cadence. This is Lance Armstrong, having a much better day than his first day in the Alps. He's going to move up the overall tonight, but of course nowhere near the leaderboard, I'm afraid to say. Jurgen van den Broek is the second man in line here, still holding that top Belgian position overall. This rider, the king of the mountains, has now fallen right through the leaders, and he's going to be surprised to see the yellow jersey coming up behind him.
Well, he was actually trying to set a bit of tempo there for Cadel Evans, and Cadel can't even stay on Jérôme Pinault's wheel here. He's obviously having a very difficult day here, and I wonder, we won't know until the end of the day what the problem was, whether it was the sequel of the crash that he had a little while back on that. He was involved in that crash, if you remember, on the stage 2 days ago when he went down at 6 kilometres into the race. Went down rather hard, and a crash like that can really leave a big bad impression on you for a number of days.
Well, as we look here at the three leaders, three chasers rather, this is behind the breakaway, which has splintered apart from the four we've seen together. And Levi Leipheimer, who was riding with Lance Armstrong, has simply disappeared off our radar at the moment. He's not showing anywhere on our computer. And of course our cameras are in the hands of our French hosts, and we go where they go. And they're going to be running out of cameras right now because the race is split up on this climb all over the mountain.
Yeah, I've got no idea, and race radio is not even mentioning the position of Levi Leipheimer. He looked quite good because he was actually on the wheel of Contador initially, but if he tried to follow him too much and he popped, he could find himself losing a huge chunk of time. Now Andy Schleck here, Phil, at the end of this stage could be looking at getting himself the yellow jersey, and that would make him the first rider from Luxembourg to wear the yellow jersey since his brother Frank back in 2008.
Oh, the effort on the early part of this climb, it seems to go on forever and ever. Vinokourov is now beginning to struggle here. Cyril Gauthier, who was in the breakaway, is now going to be dropped from this group. Also, same can be said for Gutierrez. He has gone as well. Jurgen van den Broek in second place, the face of Lance Armstrong, the 7-time winner of the Tour de France, is mixing it with the greats again.
Well, riding alongside Jurgen van den Broek, who will be climbing himself high up in the overall standings, because van den Broek is the next best placed rider in that group, and he could very well be looking at a third place position at the end of today's stage.
And still Andy Schleck is relying on the pacemaking of Jens Voigt, who cannot have much left now. We're back onto the steep ascents. We're off that little plateau, the moment of respite, all gone now as we climb up. These two, though, are going to be happy in the thought they are getting rid of all of the other contenders in this year's Tour de France as they come towards the end of this climb.
Well, Andy Schleck has got some respite, and what an incredible performance by Jens Voigt. He really is a man who will go out and die for the team, and that's what he's doing here. He's doing everything he can just to give his own teammates some respite, because he would like to try and set up another launch of an attack by Andy Schleck before he gets to the summit. But what a descent this is going to be. They're still looking, though, for 2 minutes and 44 seconds to try and catch back to the leading. In fact, it's a quartet, because they're saying, in fact, that Cunego has got back into the group. He'll be looking for the win today.
Well, we'll have a look when we get back up there. But yeah, there's no way now that Sanchez will take yellow at this sort of a time gap over Andy Schleck. The concentration in the eyes of Ivan Basso here, followed by Jurgen van den Broek, the Belgian who's sprouted wings now. He's their big star. The face of these men says it all. Armstrong goes through there as well. And just about hanging on to the back is the other Cofidis rider having a great tour, Damien Monnier.
Yeah, Monier's riding exceptionally well here to stay in contact with this, because this is a group of the real serious heads of state of the world of cycling here. Armstrong looking pretty comfortable there after the devastating day he had 48 hours ago. He now seems to be riding back into this Tour de France. It's a pity he lost so much time.
Well, he could be climbing back up to a top 20 position by the end of the day, and that's somewhere to start. These are big time gaps already. Still a long way to go in the Tour de France. Well, we are hearing on race radio, in fact, that Levi is riding, we don't quite know where he is, but he's riding with two Rabobank riders. And I would think it'll be Dennis Menchov is down there as well. Well,
that would be the logic, that he'd be riding alongside Gessing and Menchov. In fact, that is Gessing and Menchov. And the other rider in there is Joachim Rodriguez.
So he's with some great climbers here. But I think he's got to be behind the Armstrong group. Well, I would say almost certainly behind the Armstrong group here.
Well, it's a bit complicated on the slopes of the Col de la Madeleine here this afternoon. We're probably around about 2.5 kilometers to go to the summit for the head of the race. Cassar, Charteau, Sanchez and Cunego. But this race has really split to pieces, and it started, the regression really started off by Team Saxo Bank, who knew then that they had to do something for their man who's at the front end of this race. Now, if that is Sammy Sanchez, then in fact Levi Leipheimer is in a good place.
If that is Sammy Sanchez, in fact, Leipheimer did lose the wheel of Contador, but has stayed ahead of that group Armstrong-Basso.
Well, there we go. Thanks for the helicopter shot, because there is Andy Schleck with Jens Voigt.
That's not a bad position to be in right now, because a good descent could put them back up here with the leaders.
Just behind them is Sammy Sanchez, so Levi Leipheimer is riding alongside Gessing and Menchov, and Armstrong is much further back. But look at the face here on Jens Voigt. He really is doing something special today, once again.
Well, it could be Schleck, Contador, van den Broek in the first three positions overall tonight, and Leipheimer could find himself up into the top 5 riders in the Tour de France if he can hold that position and even better if he can catch up to these boys on the way down the mountain.
The only other rider who seems to be missing from the top 10 overall, Phil, in fact, is Roman Kreuziger, who I thought would be well present in any of these groups this afternoon. This man on the front, though, wearing number 19, he's just pulling away a little bit further down. Mournier here having a little bit of a hard time staying on the slipstream of Ivan Basso, who's just setting the pace, making all on his own.
There's the lassets, the corners that lie ahead of us here as they kick up to the left, and now this group has thinned down to 4 riders at the moment. Van den Broek trying to fight to hold his 4th place overall. It's the return of Ivan Basso, who is trying to climb up the overall because he's lost a little bit of time in the Tour. The man who won the Tour of Italy this year.
Well, Basso started the day in 13th place, looking for 2 minutes and 41 seconds. We've taken the top 10 riders in the overall standings today, thrown their numbers in the air, and all of a sudden they've come down, and they will come down in a different place at the end. 1 kilometre to go to the summit. It is 4 leaders. There you can see Damiano Cunego has recovered and got himself back into this group. Now, these guys, if they go over the top of this climb, Phil, with a couple of minutes advantage, they should have enough time to stay clear to the finish.
And that was why Damiano Cunego reached the leaders today. He felt this would be a day for the break to go clear, because he thought the infight would actually continue on the mountain and it wouldn't be decisive. In fact, it has been decisive because Schleck decided to attack, and only Contador has gone with him.
Well, I'd have to say, from the leading group of 4 riders here, the best descender in the group has got to be Luis Leon Sanchez. Remember, that's how he won his stage, way down into Aurillac. Came off the top of the climbs very fast indeed and opened up an advantage, and they never saw him again. But in this group behind, Jens Voigt is a pretty good descender too, and he may well be able to take advantage of the descent to pull his team leader, Andy Schleck, down towards the leading group of 4.
Well, the announcement that Saxo Bank, which leaves the sport at the end of this year, that the team has found a sponsor for the next 2 years, that has worked wonders in the morale of the team. They've all got jobs again now. One of the sponsors is SunGuard. The actual main sponsor will not be announced until at a later date, so we don't know who it is, but it's confirmed and it has happened, and paperwork has been signed. The top of the Col de la Madeleine, if you don't think you're there, you do now, because this is an enormous crowd here. It's like arriving at the summit of Alpe d'Huez just now. Sanchez just sits up. So far, it's looking good for him now. Little shake of the hands ahead there. Now, it's going to be an incredible descent off this mountain. 32 kilometres to go on the way down. These boys are going to have to take some risks. Look at that.
Well, if they want to win the stage, they're going to have to get rid of Damiano Cunego, because of these leading group, the fastest sprinter in it is number 201 there, Damiano Cunego. He knows how to win from a small group, a big group, medium-sized group, so he will be the man looking to get himself the stage victory this afternoon if they don't get caught.
Well, as we see the riders running along, you might catch a glimpse there of a bottle running alongside. Well, I'll tell you, that's the new clean bottle. It's a crazy invention, because I don't know why nobody didn't think of it before, but you can open it at both ends to make it, to wash it. As they spin over the line now, that is a very nice finish over the top of the climb for Chateau.
Chateau just
that
ahead
could be
there.
a big feather in his cap winning that one.
Well, he'll get himself a good 40 points, and that will put him up as a threatener to Jérôme Pinault.
So over the top of the Col de la Madeleine now, and it looks as though Jens is just going to fight. This man doesn't know the word give up. He knows if he can just hold on to them till it tilts downwards, he will go back to their side. Contador trying to get rid of Jens Voigt now. Doesn't want any complications. He's almost stopped down there, Jens Voigt. He's got no more legs left for this climb.
That's the only reason he couldn't stay with the group, Phil. He had nothing left in the tank. He gave everything he could over a couple of kilometres. That was the reason why he was in that breakaway in the early part of the day, to help Andy Schleck for a couple of kilometres on the slopes of this climb. Perfect tactics. They worked on this occasion. Now Contador showing us why he is regarded as one of the best climbers in the world. He's looking for 2 minutes on that leading group of 4, but what he and Andy Schleck are doing now is putting time between themselves and everybody else in the Tour de France this afternoon.
Well, the only good news for Jérôme Pinault is the order over the top of Chateau, Cunego, Sanchez and Cassar. They're not really scoring in the King of the Mountains, so he'll still keep in the lead. Little shake of the head there by Alberto Conte saying, come on, your turn, come up to the front. The Australian flags fly proudly down on the slopes, but they're going to have to wait a little while now before Cadel Evans comes up. Sadly, the pressure of the maillot jaune has hit him hard very early on. Listen to this crowd as they continue to climb. They're watching two of the best bike riders in the world right now, Alberto Contador and Andy Schleck.
Well, it's 10-10 at the moment for these two guys, and neither one of them showing any sign of weakness. Andy Schleck has tried everything he could, and he's going to have to wait now, I think, Phil. Once we go over the top here of the Col de la Madeleine, he's going to have to wait until we get down to the Pyrenees to try and challenge once more Alberto Contador. But Contador is proving that he's up for the game. Everything was right this year as Andy Schleck just goes over the top to say, I'll have a few of those points myself, just in case.
Just in case. Well, the white jersey best young rider tonight will be pulling on the yellow jersey as leader of the Tour de France, and he said for 2 days, I want that one, as he pointed at Cadel Evans's yellow jersey. This is Sanchez still continuing up. This is Samuel Sanchez, not Luis Leon, who's still up at the top there, on his way down now, trying to win.
Well, watch out for Sammy Sanchez, because as I said earlier, Phil, he's a very good descender, one of the best descenders in the main field, and he can probably pull back a 30 or 40 second deficit on the early corners of this descent.
Well, who knows how close together these riders are going to be. And the man on the top of the mountain to give him a drink, so he's fueled up for the way down. Just over 40 seconds behind. That's very, very bridgeable indeed. This is Levi coming up now, and they also can descend, these boys. And they've got to make a pretty quick descent now. They must try and bridge up to Contador and Schleck and Sanchez.
Well, the two riders from Rabobank in there, Gesink and Menchov, are extremely good bike riders, and this is going to be very good, Phil, this afternoon for the position at the top of the team classification of Team Rabobank. Number 77 in there as well is Joachim Rodriguez, again a great climber. Levi Leipheimer just sitting on the back there. He'll be doing a good operation here this afternoon in the overall standings, because he too will move up a couple of places.
Well, they've gone over the top with a gap on the terrific duo of 1 minute and 10 seconds. That is very bridgeable on the way down. It's a long, long way. It's 20 miles, 32 kilometres, all downhill to the finish now to Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne. This is the Basso, Vandenbroek, Armstrong group coming up to the top of the mountain right now. Not a lot in it. They also can make progress on the way down.
That's Kevin De Weert in there as well for Quick-Step. He's having a fine ride through the mountains. So Quick-Step from a team that weren't sure what their tactics were going to be in this Tour de France are actually already starting to get something out of it rather special, as Basso is doing a great job here, sitting on the front there in Liquigas. He crests the top of the climb. Now it's the start of the very, very long descent. The other rider in the group here for Case d'Epargne, who also had a very good day out this afternoon, is Ruben Plaza. He'll just sit on the back because he's got a teammate in the leading group of riders. Caught somewhere in the middle is Christophe Moreau, but this is much further down the slopes, and this is Cadel Evans having one of those days that you'd like to put behind you, completely behind you if at all possible. He's got a couple of teammates. Well, he has a teammate here up alongside him. This is Steve Morabito. The other rider to the other side is Tiralongo of Team Astana. Just got on the back there for Radio Shack is Jani Brakovic, winner of the Criterium de Dauphiné at the end of May, beginning of June. Well, Cadel has got to put this day all behind him now. By the top of this climb, he could have lost himself as much as 5 minutes. In fact, it's looking already at 6 minutes he's lost on Alberto Contador and Andy Schleck.
He's not just going to be out from first place, second place, third place. He's going to go even lower, I'm sorry to say, for Cadel, but recover perhaps on this very hilly mountainous route that will take us to Paris this year. He has a chance to come back, and he also has a good advantage in the time trial. So he'll have to reassess his tactics now. But look at this now. What on there? You said he went down hills quickly, but he's trying to get rid of Schleck on the way down.
Well, he has a very good descent here. He's attacking these corners. Schleck has backed off a fraction. That's probably a sensible thing to do, because if for any reason at all Contador takes a bad line round the corner, at least Andy Schleck has got the ability to correct his line.
Well, they're going down. We're hearing that Wiggins is quite a long way behind the race. He's still coming up the mountain as we're watching now. Contador, he's just trying to test the nerve of Andy Schleck here, and I do believe he's a much stronger descender than Schleck.
Yeah, Schleck is much better at going uphill, but Schleck impressed me the way he rode over the cobbles on stage 3 on the road into the forest of Arenberg. So don't think you're going to catch this bike rider out too quickly like this on the descent, because he is very agile on his machine. What I'd like to see is how Sammy Sanchez is doing behind, because he is a great descender, and he will try and use this descent field to try and pull himself back into the race.
These are the 4 leaders. 25 kilometres to go for them now as they slam the anchors on for the hairpin bend. So as they continue to go down, that is Sandy Cassar on the way down now. Anthony Charteau, then Damiano Cunego. They call him the Little Prince. And then at the back here, Luis Leon Sanchez, who was the leader on the road. Now he's shaking out that lactic acid. He's planning on victory at the finish. I should think they'll hold off, but you never know. There's still a long way to go. Just on the... Go on, Strip.
Well, they're going down this descent. Damiano Cunego must think it's Christmas this afternoon, because he's a guy who's got an incredible sprint finish. Just making a quick countback on the points for the King of the Mountains, Phil. I have a funny feeling that Charteau and Pinot might be in exactly the same number of points. So I better get the rule book out to see who's going to get the King of the Mountains jersey tonight.
They counted back on who won the big mountains and then who won the little mountains, and I would think it would give it to Charteau because he's won the first HC of the race.
Yep, that's right. It goes to the highest number of Hall category climbs at the top in your account, and that is going to go obviously then in that case to Anthony Charteau, and that's a big coup for B-Box Boyd Telecom.
Wow, that's amazing, and well done to Anthony Charteau, and rather sad for Jerome Pinot. An equal points. My goodness me, that's another race which is now coming together as the Tour itself gets through the midway point. This is Samuel Sanchez, also just checking on the descent, trying to see if he can see any flying wheels in front of him. Big wide road descent at the moment down the Col de la Madeleine, but he certainly is. He's not the best of descenders, Paul. He's really fighting this one.
Well, actually, he is a pretty decent descender. He's looking for around about 40 seconds on the 2 men in front of him, Contador and Schleck. And Alberto Contador is really going like a madman down this descent here, getting down into that very low tuck position there, the kind of position which is usually adopted by a ski racer. And Andy Schleck here is just quite happy to control and make sure that he stays in contact on the descent. Around about a 20-mile descent, 32 kilometers from the top of the climb, as Andy Schleck comes up through the inside. Careful you don't cross wheels there, Mr. Schleck, because if you do, you'll come unstuck rather quickly. But still on the slopes of the climb.
A yellow jersey arrives at the summit of the Col de la Madeleine. He's lost an awful lot of time. It's 9 minutes since the leaders went over, so he's conceding around about 7 minutes, I think it is, to the 2 men that matter.
Well, he's going to have to keep his wits about him. He's going to have to stay courageous and strong to try and keep himself in the top 10. Just climbing onto the back there. There's a very good performance by the new leader, I have to say, of Garmin Transitions, because that there is Johan van Sommeren.
He did well. He was the rider we saw tapping on the referee's car when they tried to chop him out of one of the bends early on this climb. Anyway, Steve Morabiti leads over Cadel Evans, 9:37 down on the leaders.
And isn't fate a funny thing, Phil, because Johan van Sommeren, sitting on the back of this group last year, was a teammate of a certain Cadel Evans.
Well, this is a Tour de France with changing faces, and that's an overshoot there.
Vandenbroek.
It's a Vandenbroek with a puncture, I think. Back wheel flat tire. Now that is really bad luck, and I was about to tell you how the face of this Tour is changing minute by minute, and there's another example. This rider starting the day in 4th place overall.
Well, he's got a chance to pull himself back into the race. There's a number of team cars up there. He'll be able to use the convoys on a couple of occasions, but this is what it looks like going down a mountain at around about 80 kilometers an hour, 50 miles an hour for these guys.
These are the 4 leaders now, and they're going to try and hang on, but Contador and Schleck are coming. There's no doubt about that. They're 2.5 minutes behind them. As this man here, Luis Leon Sanchez, tries to win the stage. So too the Petit Prince, which is Damiano Cunego. They're the most likely to win today if it comes down to a sprint. These 2 are chasing. Well, as we look here at Samuel Sanchez, you can almost smell the burning rubber. This man is racing and taking some risks on the descent of the Madeleine. He's trying to bridge the gap to Sanchez, to Contador and to Schleck, who have just caught up with Moreau, who's coming backwards from the leading group, and he's taking the risks.
Well, I'm not sure if you just heard that squealing. Those were his brakes going down here. Now, one thing that is extremely dangerous in the mountains is if you use your brakes a lot like these guys are, what actually happens is you start to heat up the rims of the wheels. And what happens then, these tires are stuck on with glue, and it starts to melt the glue a fraction. And if you're not too careful, you can find your tire starting to roll off or even popping off.
Well, don't let's imagine that happening right now, because Schleck is still pushing on here. This is now Christophe Moreau with them, who won't help, of course, because he's got Luis Leon Sanchez ahead. And it looks as though Contador prefers always to ride laying off the chase. These are the leaders now, running away from the Col de la Madeleine, heading down towards the Valley Road, which will bring them to the finishing line. Sandy Cassar's been doing an awful lot of leading down the mountain.
No, he has. He's the man who's picked most of the lines around those corners. Second place is Cunego, then it's Anthony Chateau and Luis Leon Sanchez, who's put a lot of effort into this breakaway this afternoon, is quite happy to take position number 4. Well, 15 kilometers to go now for the leaders. The race situation is these 4 leaders are still hanging on to 1 minute and 51 seconds ahead of Contador, Schleck and Moreau. But looking for only about 5 or 10 seconds now is Sammy Sanchez, the Olympic gold medalist from Beijing. And he can't be too far away now from making the junction with the Contador Schleck group. And I did say that he is a very good descender, this man. This is the group he's trying to make contact with. Andy Schleck getting out of the saddle there in the white jersey at the front, the best young rider. And at the end of today's stage, he will theoretically be inheriting the yellow jersey, which was on the shoulders of Cadel Evans at the start of the day. This man, though, Phil, I have to say, Sammy Sanchez is now looking for not much more than 12 or 13 seconds. And I'm sure around every corner he's peering like you are just now to see whether or not he can see the shadow of the guys he's chasing.
The Olympic champion, Samuel Sanchez, something he doesn't get enough glory about being, because there's no specific jersey for the Olympic champion like there is for the world champion. And he's now desperately trying to reach these boys. He's climbing to a good place in the overall tonight as well. It's still the white jersey of the best young rider in the last 2 editions of the Tour de France, going for 3 this time, who will be the next man in yellow tonight, because poor Cadel Evans has lost too much time today.
He's lost a huge chunks of time. He'd be staring down around about 10 minutes loss, I would think, Phil, at the end of the day this afternoon. There is the chasing trio. That's the second group on the road, Contador, Schleck and Moreau. And Andy Schleck quite happy to pick his own lines around these corners. Why now I think Contador taking a back seat. It's not up to Contador to do any attacking in a situation like this. He, I think, realizes that everybody else in this bike race, if they want to win the Tour de France, they have to attack him. They need time before we get to the final time trial on the Saturday before the end.
15 kilometers to go. Schleck takes the wide one. Now this man's going to see 15 kilometers to go. There's that banner down there. He's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And if he looks over his shoulder, he might now see them around that bend. Sanchez, I think, did take a glance to the right there. He's going to leave his braking late. You can, as I say, you can smell the rubber here when this guy slams his brakes on. He comes out wide, and he can see them now. There they are, down there on the next bend.
Well, he took that very well indeed. You know, he went over to the left-hand side of the road. He crunched straight down through the apex. He hardly lost any momentum at all. Whereas these 3 here, with Andy Schleck leading around the corners, he seems to be losing momentum. He's going across to the apex of the corner much too late and not really taking a fast line around these corners, therefore losing a little bit of his average speed.
So now we are seeing Contador always laying off these 2, just keeping an eye where he is on the way down. These are dangerous moments for the top contenders in the Tour de France. They know they're going to be stressed by the descent. They know today, though, the race finishes at the bottom of the climb.
Well, that's the important thing. And for Sammy Sanchez, Phil, what he really has to do is he's got to try and make the junction before he gets off this descent, because otherwise it's going to be quite difficult for him on the flatter part of the course.
Inside, 15 kilometers to go. This is the town of La Chambre we are starting to nibble the outskirts of now. The room, and we're going to go straight through. In fact, no, this is the town just before La Chambre at the moment. As the riders continue, this is with the leading group. They've just gone through Saint-Arve.
Well, this is the leading quartet. Now this is the chasing trio, and they're still looking for a big chunk of time. I don't think they're actually going to make the junction before the end, but what's more important is the time gaps that are being generated. Sammy Sanchez is now looking for a mere 10 seconds, but as he gets to the bottom of this climb now, he's going to find it difficult if he doesn't bridge that gap right now, because here he's in that very aerodynamic position. He's getting himself down now nice and low. He's started the day in 9th position in the overall standings, looking for 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And he too could find himself leapfrogging up into possibly the top 5 at the end of the day. Over the speed bump there, a little bit of a wobble. There are the cars just in front of him. That's what he's using to, that's what he's aiming at. This man is the Olympic champion, a title that he took in Beijing in 2008. Jumping over those speed bumps there and making himself take all kinds of risks to try and make the junction with these 2 riders, these 3 riders. Schleck is on the front, Contador followed by Christophe Moreau. Big day today for the team of the Spanish team Case d'Epargne, because they came out and put 3 men into that leading group, and that I think has been a very clever strategy for them.
Well, it looks like they're leaving all the work now to the rider in white, Andy Schleck. It's been his day today. He's hit out at Contador. Contador's had the guns, though. He cracked a little bit to Avoriaz. He hasn't looked like cracking at all today.
Well, Sammy Sanchez is struggling to close down, Phil, those final few seconds, because he's now stretched out to 15 seconds, and it was as close as 10 seconds. These riders now will see the banner across the road here, indicating they are now looking at 10 kilometers to go to the finish. It's completely flat from here, and it's going to take about 12 to 14 minutes for them to get to the line.
And I don't think it's possible now for the leaders to be caught, these boys here. I've been away virtually throughout the whole race. On the road from Morzine to Les Clous was where they got clear. It was a long way before Damiano Cunego caught up. He had to chase, but they are now at 10 kilometers to go. We're looking at about 1.5 minutes to the Contador Schleck Moreau group, nearly 2 minutes to Sanchez, and then 4.5 to the Armstrong group. But ahead of the Armstrong group, and we don't know what the time gap is the group of Levi Leipheimer.
Yeah, big sort out done on the slopes of the Col de la Madeleine. I would say that the man in that group will kick himself if he doesn't win is Damiano Cunego.
So we're coming away from the mountain now. Long wide boulevard highways will take us down to Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne. Andy Schleck knows today all his attacking riding has probably eliminated every challenger except Alberto Contador, and he really wants time on Contador. He's going to have to work out where he gets it, because Contador can handle him in the time trial, so he's got to lose him at some stage in the next few days.
Well, the last Luxembourger to wear the yellow jersey in the Tour de France wore the same name as Andy Schleck. It was his brother Frank back in 2008, and here Sammy Sanchez did everything he could to get across the gap, but I don't think he's going to make it anymore.
I think he's cracked. He made a huge effort, and he's blown up going down the hill, taking on drinks there. He's not going to cross the gap to these riders now. These are the 3 chasers looking at 10 kilometers to go, while up the road are the 4 leaders who can begin to feel safe and start to think how they're going to outwit one another for the finish. It's not an easy finish actually here in Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne. It's slightly uphill, and it's no straightaway. It just sort of bends round to the left as they come up to the line.
But the tricky thing is there is that very strange left-hand turn, about 25 meters to go. There is Sammy Sanchez. He's
so
still going to keep trying.
Desperately
it's
close.
So difficult when you're in a situation like that. You can almost touch the yellow car there, but you just can't pull yourself up to it.
Oh, know how he must feel. Desperately close to catching, and the legs just said, that's it, I'm out. 10 kilometers to go for Sanchez. The gap is starting to open up. Got to watch out, because he might well get picked up by the Menchoff-Gesink Leipheimer group, which is not that far behind at the moment.
He's hurting, Phil. He's going through all kinds of hurt here. He took lots of risks on the descent. He almost came up. At one stage, he got to as close as 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, once he got onto the flat part, that's where he started to lose his advantage. But he has to keep riding now, because, as you say, just behind him, he's got the group of Denny Menchoff, Robert Gesink and Levi Leipheimer chasing him.
I just wonder, because he keeps grimacing, whether he's got cramp now and his legs are all locking up here. We'll go back up to the group he can't reach, and this is now Contador doing his share of the pace making. Schleck happy to take it, and Moreau will not help. He'll sit at the back there and try and even beat them in the sprint, I would think, knowing Christophe Moreau, because he's got his team man up front Luis Leon Sanchez. Case Dupont could be going into the team lead with this performance today.
They very well could be. They had 3 men in that early breakaway, but you know, at the end of the day, Andy Schleck is going to inherit the yellow jersey with a 41-second advantage over Alberto Contador. Now, that is not a lot, and he knows it. He knows when we get down to the Pyrenees, he's got to come out and race as he did again today, but he's got to hope that on that occasion he can crack Alberto Contador. I have a feeling that Contador will get better as this race goes on, because he's always said, as far as he's concerned, the most important part of this race is the Pyrenean stages.
Camera's gone back to Lance Armstrong's group here. He's probably group 4 on the road right now. Armstrong himself losing his big time. 10 minutes he lost, don't forget, on the climb to Avoriaz, and now poor Cadel Evans is in the same boat. He's lost virtually the same amount of time, but for different reasons, I guess, because Lance did crash, and Cadel Evans has just been broken on the climb of the Madeleine.
Yeah, it's very sad when you see a yellow jersey crumble just like that, because Cadel Evans actually looked very comfortable on the slopes up to the summit of Morzine-Avoriaz when he inherited the overall leader's jersey. This is the next group on the road. De Basso, Jurgen van der Broek, after that little bit of a panic he had when he had a flat tyre, is back in this race at 10 kilometres to go.
Done very well. Even though they're losing time, they're going to be pretty well up the overall. He won't lose much tonight. Levi Leipheimer, though, could be going over Jurgen van der Broek for that 4th place, because he's ahead of this group. There's the team car. He's telling him it's okay, keep going. He's saying it's good.
Yeah, team manager, that's Herman Frison in the team manager's car there for Omega Pharma Lotto, and I think he has done a good ride, and he could see himself, Phil, climbing up probably into around about 3rd position at the end of the day.
Well, Cadel Evans has plummeted with a 10-minute loss today, out of the top 10 riders, I would think. Another man who's not been in our pictures at all is the British rider Bradley Wiggins, who cracked on the road to Avoriaz. He was in the break at the start of the climb of the Madeleine, but he also has now disappeared too.
Difficult situation for these 4 riders now, because they've got to try and figure out, having worked together as allies since they broke away, they've all shared the pacemaking throughout the whole of the afternoon. They've now got to try and figure out how they're going to outwit the other 3 guys in the breakaway with them.
We're looking now at the man. Oh, no, we're not. We're now gone back, and he looks as though he might have recovered a little bit here now. Sammy Sanchez, the Olympic champion, not grimacing quite so much. The road is much more in the favour of the time trial rider now, the flatter roads. And Contador, they must know he's chasing, and they're not going to allow him a ride up to them.
Yeah, well, he's actually still looking now, Phil, for about 31 seconds, so he is losing time on the Contador-Schleck tandem, whereas Armstrong, for once in his life here, has got a nice, comfortable armchair ride. He doesn't have to do any pacemaking at all in this group, because he has his teammate Levi Leipheimer in front.
Well, the overall standings will make happier reading for Lance Armstrong tonight, because he will have recovered not so much time on the stars of the race, but he will have seen a lot of riders ahead of him now fall behind him in the overall standings. Pictures acting up a little bit there as we now run down to the finish. In the valley is Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne. Just wondering where we are at the moment. Now, what's happened here?
Cadel Evans in the yellow jersey.
Has he left the group behind? He's gone for it alone.
Well, he's taken the risks on the descent. Don't forget, Cadel Evans in the first part of his career was an extremely good mountain biker. Therefore, he will have been able to take the advantage of the descent to try and pull back some of his deficit. He needs to stay in this bike race. He needs to get his head around the fact that he's had a single bad day, and you can fight back from something like this. And now he's going to try and just solo to victory right around that corner, using all of the road possible.
Well, it really is an amazing Tour de France this year, isn't it? Who would have thought you'd see a lone image of the yellow jersey of the Tour racing down towards the finish in Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne? Every cyclist in the race has given themselves 110% on this day today. Cadel has felt the pressure. Looks as though Yanni Brejkovic has also come back into that group.
5 kilometres to go now. This is the leading group, but you know, Phil, Contador and Schleck behind are actually eating into this advantage, and they are now just a minute behind the leading quartet, with Sammy Sanchez losing himself now, going out to 40 seconds.
1 minute. I still don't see them coming back, but these boys are going to start looking at each other, checking each other out, and if they slow down, then they will come back for sure, and they'll nail them back right in sight of the finish. They broke away today in a group of 11, then they changed because they lost Hushoft. They were recharged by arrival of others. After only 12 kilometres, this break was underway, and they're still here at the finish today, and it looks as though a breakaway at last is going to succeed.
Well, the breakaway is 4 riders. They're still holding on to the 1 minute advantage they've got over this chasing trio. But the big question is, who's going to come out of that breakaway as the winner? I would have to say that the big favourite for the win is got to be Damiano Cunego. And it is a Damiano Cunego type finish. It's a long drag up. It's around about 700 metres to climb up to the finish line. But what is dodgy and tricky about it is that left-hand bend at about 35 metres from the finish line. You can't actually see the finishing line until it's right up upon you.
So those that know the finish might have the advantage. Now these three can see the 2 yellow neutral service cars behind the leading 4 riders, so they know exactly where they are. We're coming towards the 4 kilometre banner, and there it is. Are the leaders under it? Yes, they are. 4 kilometres, about 6 minutes of riding for these riders at the moment. And so all of the work being done by the new leader in the King of the Mountains now, Anthony Chocteau. We look down here now. We've just gone inside. 4 kilometres to go for the 4 leaders. Less than a minute behind now. The big 3 are coming, and that's Contador. And with him also tucked in is Morrow and also Andy Schleck. They might reach them. It'll be desperately close.
Well, they need to be very careful because, in fact, it's down to 50 seconds now. The trio who are chasing the leading quartet, they're eating into that advantage all of the time. So if they start messing around and try to do some very clever tactical manoeuvres, they could find themselves getting caught inside of the final kilometre. Andy Schleck here, number 11, is very prepared to keep riding at the front end of the main field because he realises what they've done today. He and Alberto Contador has put time between themselves and every one of the other challengers in this race.
Well, our computer's saying 46 seconds the gap now. These boys off reaching those 4 front runners who I think are surely going to slow down and look at one another. This is the long main road, boulevard. The autoroute is running on the left. We're not on that. We're on the one on the right, running down into Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne now. First time the Tour's ever finished here. I find it absolutely amazing because we come here almost annually, but we've never stopped before. 3 kilometres to the finish now, and Luis Leon Sanchez took a look over his shoulder to see what's going on. He's the man that wants it now, but he's going to have to argue with little Damiano Cunego.
Well, he's hovering at the back of this group, and I think he realises the power of the sprint of Damiano Cunego, and if he's got the legs and he's got a very good ability to time trial, he may well try a jump with around about 1.5 to 2 kilometres to go and hope that the other guys don't get into his slipstream, and that will really then start to put Damiano Cunego on the offensive. But the gap, Phil, is still coming down because it's now only 36 seconds at 3 kilometres to go. It really is plummeting.
Well, that's probably why the guy at the back here, no, not the previous group, is looking over his shoulders all the time. He knows they are coming back here. 35 seconds, the computer is saying now. And all of the work being done by Andy Schleck and by Alberto Contador, because Moreau will not help them at all. He also can pack a sprint, you know, if they get him up there. And
what a turn for the books that would be if this group made the junction inside the final kilometre and Christophe Moreau, riding his last Tour de France at 39 years of age, came up with a victory.
And what a lovely victory it is too. He wears the flashes there, former champion of France himself. He's finished 4th overall in the Tour de France in years gone by. This is 15th time racing around France. He's 1 short of joining the record holder Joop Zoetemelk. Now, the sun is still up in the sky.
Sanchez is getting a little bit twitchy here now.
Don't blame him.
He knows that the only chance he's got of getting the victory here this afternoon is jumping this group with inside the last 1.5 kilometres. Cunego has got to be very attentive. He's the fastest finisher. He's the guy. This sprint finish here, Phil, is perfectly made, tailor-made for man wearing number 201, Damiano Cunego. Slightly uphill, a big power sprint, and then a little turn to the left-hand side. So he will now start to be feeling a little twitchy and looking at getting himself a Tour de France stage victory.
Well, they better start thinking quick, Paul. The gap is now 20 seconds. They are coming so quickly, and you know it is uphill too, which will favour the 2 climbers here. And this is all down to the pacemaking of Andy Schleck. They are now at 2 kilometres, and they're just up front. We make it 14 seconds. The computer says 17, and now Andy Schleck says, has probably said to Contador, we can catch them, let's go.
Well, the fact that the final 750 metres are actually uphill could be to the advantage of these 3 chasers. We are looking, after all, Phil, at the 2 strongest men in the Tour de France in 1st and 2nd place in this group, and they know just exactly how to time their effort. I'd have to say Christophe Moreau just sitting there, he's in the armchair situation here, because he has sat on these riders since they caught him on the descent of the Col de la Madeleine.
There they were, just around that corner. Poor old Sammy Sanchez can't quite get in onto the stage of this one. He's under 2 kilometres to go, but I'm afraid he's racing for only 8th place on the road right now. His head rocking a bit on those shoulders, and he could be picked up if he's not careful by the group behind, which contains Levi Leipheimer. There are the 4 riders who'll be run down on the river on the right. They're going under 1 kilometre to go now. They can't afford to wait too long, because it's not an easy kilometre as they turn right and start the climb. And then at 1 kilometre to go, it's going to be close.
10 seconds is all it is as Andy Schleck goes around the corner. If this road would straight, there they are, they're straight in front of them.
Well, this is going to be, and look, somebody's going to have to make a run at him now. Moreau will not want to do it. He's probably willing his teammate Sanchez to go, and he knows that if he doesn't, he's going to have to go and try and win the stage for himself as the oldest man in the race. And now, do they realise that they're right on the back wheel? I'm not sure they do, because Andy Schleck is right alongside them, through on the inside. The crowd are going ballistic here now. Schleck is going to read out the 2 Case de Pan riders. Well, they timed the catch, but it wasn't the bunch. It was just 3 riders today as they swing for home now. Which way is this going to go?
Well, Damiano Cunego's right up there in the ideal position, Phil. He's a great sprinter. Contador wants to try and get himself a stage victory if he can. The sweeping bend, look at that, going around the corner. Luis Leon Sanchez tries to get himself into position, but still Damiano Cunego, Phil, is sitting there. The finish is just around the corner there.
Well, what an amazing scene here in Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne. A massive, massive crowd. Why did we never come here before? I'll never know. Sandy Cassar is opening up the sprint now. He's got Luis Leon Sanchez on him. Here comes the Petit Prince. The little Prince is going for the inside corner. He won't get that. Sandy Cassar is too wide. The finish is there. Sandy Cassar knew all about that for sure. He knew that finish was just off that bend.
He knew you had to go around that corner in first place, but what a comeback by those 2 riders, Andy Schleck and Gilberto Contador. Pity this man never got back. He really did a great ride there this afternoon. The Olympic champion from Beijing. This is Sammy Sanchez, and what a race we have had this afternoon. Very, very rarely can you see a group come back quite like that in the final kilometre of the race.
But in the big picture, Paul, the top 2 riders, Schleck and Contador, lost no time to anyone in the end.
No, they did exactly what they had to do. They pulled themselves back in. They are stretching themselves ahead of the other contenders in this race as the 2 pre-race favourites who've done the best coming out of the first 10 days of the Tour.
So Sandy Cassar in the colours of Euskaltel-Euskadi comes home around that corner. No doubt in my mind that he knew that corner was there and how short it was off the bend. The little Prince made the wrong move. He dived for the barriers. That was exactly the wrong place to go. And when he come round the corner, there he is in the corner. You look at his face on the right there. Oh, he thinks the line's only there. I've got no chance. And Sandy Cassar gets his first stage win since 2007 in the Tour de France. Big win for the French team for sure. Now, this is the Levi Leipheimer Gessing Menchoff group. They are losing time, but they are going to be very much best of the rest here. This could be a big result. Even Jens Voigt held on to the coattails of this one. But this is a good result for Leipheimer. Leipheimer is climbing the overall classification. He's not worried about a sprint win here as they come off towards the finish. The straight down, every second counts here.
Well, Levi Leipheimer has now definitely been promoted to the overall leader of Team Radio Shack. He's lost a little bit of time this afternoon, and that's why they're riding as they are up to the finish line, because at the end of the day, every second could count in this race, the Tour de France this year. This could be the difference between finishing in the top 5 or climbing onto the podium.
Well, Rodriguez is going to take it off the bend. He must have been here before, the former champion of Spain. Rodriguez brings over Leipheimer and Gessing, then Voigt, and then Menchoff at the back. He might lose a second there, but that's a good ride by Levi Leipheimer, and not too far behind either was this group here of Van den Broek, who's going to keep a high overall place. Basso is in there too, so too is Lance Armstrong. Armstrong has made enormous strides up the overall classification 2 days after he lost them because of crashes. No, he hasn't come back in the hunt for the yellow jersey, but he's showing us he is still an extremely good bike rider at 38 years of age.
Leading him up there, Kevin De Weert. Jurgen van den Broek is a rider in the white jersey. He also will climb up a fair way in the overall standings. Maybe not third as he was hoping to, but he will move up probably into the top 5 at the end of the day. Basso's in the lime green jersey there of Liquigas. Armstrong takes up the rear.
But as we look here at We Love Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, yes, I think we do. It was a tremendous crowd that they provided for us here today. We're still waiting, of course, for the arrival of the maillot jaune, Cadel Evans. This is Alexander Vinokourov, and with him there too is Andreas Kloden. But the big thing is now the clock is counting Cadel Evans, not just out of yellow, but possibly out of all hope of staying on the podium for Paris.
Roman Kreuziger coming in this group as well, and he will have plummeted down the overall standings. He started the day fairly high up in 7th place overall, but he wasn't able to take the pace on the slopes of the Col de la Madeleine. Andreas Kloden there with Vinokourov, and just coming in at the back there, Monnier, the young rider from Team Cofidis, who really is pretty much ripped up from the crash he had on the descent.
And again, Monnier, one of the future hopefuls here for France. He's proved today he is a man for the Tour de France. Up with the leaders, crashes, still finishes in a very, very strong position. So as the cameras now wander around here on the mountain side, looking for the stage result, no doubt. Sandy Gassar was the winner today. Sanchez second. They'll all get same time. Cunego, Moreau, Charteau. That was the order over the line. There was a small time gap to the ones just behind. Contador loses 2 seconds, but the same as Schleck too. Sanchez 52 seconds back. And Leipheimer's group comes in 27 seconds behind. So losing 25 to the white jersey and to Contador. But Leipheimer climbing up certainly overall tonight. It's been an incredible day, and believe me, it all happened in the last 50 kilometers of the day. Well, as we look down on the peloton here, I must say you can't beat scenery like this. Now, this is the Sauté Lake here. It was created by the French Electricity Board. It's another man-made lake, and this region is full of them. There's the famous barrage at the end of it here. And the peloton, although they're in a long, long line here at the moment, the time gap is telling us they're never going to bridge 11 minutes today.
Well, no, I think it's a turn-off day today. Just by the way, if you have a look at the dam wall there, that dam wall is 126 meters high and holds back 115 million cubic meters of water in this canyon, and in places it's up to 200 meters in depth.
That's an awful lot of water, as the peloton here have been dousing themselves with it all day long. I saw Bradley Wiggins back at the team car pouring 2 liters of it over his head earlier. It is so hot today, pushing just short of 100 degrees, about 35 degrees Celsius. And there is the beautiful situation. The riders right round the rim of the lake here now. With these 6 leaders, I think they worked it out early on. We've seen day after day of breakaways being wiped out as close as the last 4 kilometers to go. It's not going to happen on Bastille Day, and to complete the party, one of the 2 Frenchmen in the break should win. Well, I'm not sure they can.
Well, they're going to have to outwit Vasily Kirienka or Mario Ertz. It really is amazing. Whenever you travel through the mountains of France, you can see these small streams. Then all of a sudden, the French have harnessed all that power and changed it into hydroelectric. And they are really becoming the world leaders in the development of renewable energy sources.
Here's we're looking at the Lotto team car. This is the most experienced man in the breakaway, Mario Ertz. He's rider 102, having a chat with the boys. This the experience of the breakaway. He's the most experienced in the breakaway.
Well, he is from the number of years he's been a professional since 1996, but he's never been a prolific winner. He's always pretty much been a worker in a breakaway like this, Phil. You know, he's won Flèche Wallonne, but never really lots of races.
Best stage finish for some of these riders. 33rd, by the way, is the best stage finish for Sergio Paolini. And Maxime Bouet's had a 2nd place. That was down in Spa. Ertz has had a 2nd place. Devenant in his first Tour de France has only had a 73rd. So whatever happens today, then almost all of them going to have a personal result here. None has ever won a stage.
No, they haven't. Actually, I would discount Bouet's 2nd place, because that's the day when there was a big white truce over the main field. So that really doesn't count too much to me. But it does count the position of a 2nd for Mario Ertz, because as we've said, he's a very experienced professional bike rider.
Just seeing that French flag there, the wind coming across the road at the riders, and normally those conditions would have made for a very tough race. But the way the cookie has crumbled today, the best placed rider in this break is 32 minutes behind Ertz. There's no reason to chase.
Well, they still have got to get it into their minds that despite the fact that a lot of these riders are very often are team helpers, they've got to get it into their minds that they want to be a team winner, they want to be a stage winner, and could be the difference between winning and losing when it comes down to the end. Yesterday, Sandy Cassar, the Frenchman, to me was not the fastest man in that breakaway, but he was the one who had the most burning desire to win the stage, which is why he studied the stage finish in his book the night before. Every stage that he thought he would have a chance, and he's been and he's looked at, and he's tried to do as much research as possible to make sure he puts himself into the right position to get the victory. And he had to actually said he'd looked at that race finish and he knew that in the final bend you had to be in the first 2 positions if you wanted to win, which is why he battled. And he said he ended up making a bit of a mistake because he actually started making his effort at 350 meters to go, but he still came up with the goods because he had that desire to win.
So the valleys and the hills, as we go just along this beautiful section, we're just about now to enter the department of the Haute-Alpes for the last 50 kilometers of the day. So we're still in the Isère, which is the famous river of the region. In 5 kilometers we will go into the High Alps department. David Miller, he really has having an unfortunate tour now. Started off very, very strongly, but he's crashed and his back is killing him. Yesterday, such courage to finish the stage, rode the whole day on his own and finished. It was the worst day of his career in a Tour de France. And I think he's been back to the doctors today too. I think he's still in desperate trouble.
No, he is. He finished last on the day, Phil. He lost 42 minutes, but he rode the whole stage on his own, and the elimination time was 47 minutes. So he was actually well inside. But having ridden that whole mountain stage on his own, his body will not have recovered overnight, and he's still probably going through some kind of personal purgatory on the roads of the Tour de France this afternoon.
Well, you say well inside at the end of the day. Yes, he was inside by 5 minutes, but when you looked at that, about 60, 70 kilometers to ride, you would really have to make huge efforts, especially on the run into the finish yesterday. Anyway, he's home and dry for another day.
Well, preaching to the converted there, because I know exactly what David Miller went through in 1985. I rode a very similar type of stage when I crashed in the early part of the day after about a kilometer and a half, and had to ride the whole of the stage on my own. And theoretically, I should have been eliminated from the race, but the referees thought that I'd been a fairly courageous chap and decided to keep me in the race, and I went on to finish that race well up into Paris. But for David Miller, it would have been a long, hard day, and it just goes to prove the mettle that many of these professional bike riders have. And again, as I've said on so many occasions, Phil, any other bike race Miller would have abandoned, but not the Tour de France.
That's right. In any other bike race, there wouldn't be 2 Frenchmen in this breakaway, because they would never have chased like they did to get in here. It took them about 20 kilometers to catch up. They would have probably stayed in the peloton and said, let them go. But this was a special day for France, so there was no Frenchman up there. 2 have come across. Both the same age, 23, both in their 2nd Tour de France.
Just getting some information from out on the course, Phil, concerning the surface of the road. In fact, one of the spectators out on the course has sent me a message to say that when he's been watching the race, it sounds as if the riders are riding in water, because the surface of the pavement is actually starting to melt because of the temperatures out on the course.
These are the very, very conditions that we had in 2003 coming into Gap, when Lance Armstrong was right behind Yoshiba Bolocki as the rider fell. Lance took to the field, cut across the field, rejoined the race and managed to finish with the leaders, but Bolocki was left lying in liquid tar with a broken pelvis.
Which comes back to talked about the luck, bad luck that you can have. Now, Lance Armstrong had luck on his side on that occasion, because if he'd crashed 5 meters ahead or 5 meters after that, there wouldn't have been that little bridge across the ditch, and he wouldn't have been able to go into the field. He would have broadsided Yoshiba Bolocki, and that's just the way things work out sometimes.
Looking out across 2 lonely windmills here. What a shame we have to spoil such a beautiful view with those things, but there's the lake down below, the Sauté Lake, as our camera just pans around what is a stunning piece of scenery here in the Alps, and the weather could not be better today. I suppose the riders might wish it was a little bit cooler, but with the wind that's blowing into the riders, it's more pleasant for the riders, in fact, than for the spectators, because the riders keep a little bit cooler.
Just looking over to the top there, it's nice to see that little mountain on the far side is a fairly well-known mountain in this part of the world. It's known as the Massif de Devoli, and it peaks out at 3,000 meters in altitude. It's actually sadly, it's been the scene of 2 air catastrophes on its peaks. In 1946, a US Air Force plane crashed into that with 4 victims. And again, in 1950, a Canadian plane crashed in there as well when it was taking pilgrims on the way to Rome from Montreal, and 58 people died.
Right, well, these are happier days, at least, as the rider's now 52.5 kilometres to go. You know, we might hit 12 minutes here, Paul. It's now moved out to 11:23. And it's still going up, and we're only 52 kilometres left to race.
Yep, the solitary windmills just above the lake of Sauté, and all renewable forms of energy. These big turbines, in fact, some of the bigger turbines could produce up to 1 megawatt of electricity. And everybody started to wonder who's going to win the stage from this leading group of 6 riders who've got a very good chance now of coming up with the victory this afternoon. This is Christian Knies, and his jersey slightly different from the rest of his teammates because he is the German national champion. Lots of work going on in the race today, but mainly at the back end of the main field as riders take on board drinks and bottles, first of all to drink and keep themselves hydrated, but also cold bottles of water as well to keep them cooled down, which lends us over to the rather interesting story of one of the teams at AG2R, who at the end of every stage have an ice-cold bath for the riders. Now, the idea behind this new technology is because the body's been out in extremely hot temperatures during the course of the day, the ice-cold bath is to lower the core body temperature down as quickly as possible and help the riders recuperate.
Right.
Just looking here at Andy Schleck, enjoying his first day in the yellow jersey, the first Luxembourger to wear the yellow jersey since his own brother Frank did a couple of years ago in 2008. A long ride down towards the finishing gap. There's the best way to see the race if you want to. Those helicopters at the side of the road are the helicopters that host the VIPs. Now, those VIP trips, if you ever get invited to one, start in Paris. You're flown down here in a private jet, then helicoptered out to the race route.
Peloton have got that diagonal line on the front now, which we call an echelon, indicates the wind direction. So the man on the front rides into the wind, the others try to hide from it, and they change partners at the front. Occasionally in this case, because all of the riders on the same team, Saxo Bank, they're there for one reason, to look after Andy Schleck.
Well, they're a solid squad, and they've lost, I think, a serious ally in Frank Schleck, and that may be why Andy's going to have a hard time in the mountains trying to outfox and outwit Alberto Contador, because I think they would have formed an incredible duo. Because I actually think that Frank Schleck this year, Phil, had the form equal to his brother. Now, if they both could have climbed the same way as Andy was climbing on the slopes of the Col du Madeleine, that would have been fireworks.
Well, there's no doubt it would have caused intrigue and confusion amongst the other leaders of the Tour de France, or contenders of the Tour de France, because Frank was on very, very good form, and he may have lost a real chance of a podium place because of his crash on the cobblestones up in northern France, in the region we always call the hell of the north. A triple fracture of his collarbone there, and that was a big loss to his brother Andy, but he doesn't seem to be doing too bad, I must say. And messages from his brother is keep calm, apparently, and Andy's response is keep calm. I'm the calmest member of the family, even when I'm not racing a bike. So he says, I don't think they need to tell me that.
I think he's probably right as well. He really is very relaxed, chatting with us at the start every morning. He seems to be quite happy to have a chat with the reporters and get himself out onto the road. He is an incredible talent, though, Phil, and the way he climbs, he is pretty much equal to Alberto Contador. They can throw punches at each other as if they were in a boxing ring, and then all of a sudden they come back up and they fight again when the next bell goes for the next round.
Yes, what Contador didn't know, that the constant attacking by Andy Schleck yesterday, if Contador had attacked Schleck near the end, he would have dropped him because Andy had nothing left. But we don't know that at the time. Maybe Contador had nothing left either. Well, still plenty of people on holiday on Bastille Day to cheer on these 6 leaders. They're going to have make a cup of tea in between, because the peloton is now running nearly 12 minutes behind that leading 6 riders. And we're still a little way to go to the top of the Noyer.
Yep, it's a little bit up the road, but for the riders in the breakaway, it's starting to look that little bit more serious as well, because they've got to try and figure out just exactly how they're going to outwit the other riders in the breakaway with them, because this is one of the opportunities for one of those riders in the 6-man breakaway, Phil, that you may well never ever get again in a career.
Yeah, good point. Now you can get some idea. You do feel as though you're on a plateau at the moment, don't you, taking in that shot from the helicopter? We're about 8 kilometres away from the start of the climb of the Col du Tourmalet, and I'm just wondering if somebody will try to break on this climb and then escape for the finish. They've got about 34 kilometres over the top down to the finish here in Gap. Well, and it might be a time to have a go.
Well, the one man I don't think they'll catch out is 102 there, Mario Ertz, because he is a very clever tactician. He's a Belgian rider, raced for the majority of his career on Team Omega Pharma Lotto, and he will be waiting for the move. He will have worked out all the scenarios in his mind. He will have looked at the other riders in the break to see who looks the most comfortable on the climbs, and he'll be waiting to see whether or not he can jump across onto that guy's wheel. Maybe Sergio Paulinho will be the guy to have a go. Again, not a prolific winner, but a very good climber.
Just looking here at Kirienka, giving nothing away there. He knows the television camera's on him, so he's just trying to pretend he's not hurting at all. As it's also a little bit of psychology or kidology for the riders. When they look at each other, they always look as though they're cool and not under pressure. And very often they are, of course. Already the salt stains beginning to come through his racing jersey today, as they've got to keep taking plenty of fluid on in these conditions. Not just for today, but for the rest of the tour. It has been a very, very hard Tour de France this year. Many of the riders have been knocked around bodily, not just by the roads, but by the crashes as well. Well, the concentration on the 6 men, nobody giving anything away at all here. The 47 kilometres from the finish. We'll start the climb at around about 42 kilometres to go to the finish. We top out at 34.
Well, you know, we've been coming to the Tour de France for a number of years, both of us, and every time we look at views like this, it never ceases to amaze me, the beauty of this country, which changes from day to day. Yep. From the flatlands of the north to the mountains of the Alps to the different kind of scenery that we get once we climb up into the Pyrenees.
Man requiring assistance here, Gregor Bole. He's had his fair share of accidents, but it looks like all bandages are off today for him. He's been racing for the first 3 days with his arm swathed in bandages because he fell over the cobblestones of the north, but he's recovered, and this is his first Tour de France. He's a very fast sprinter, but he's here to lead out Alessandro Battacchi, who rumoured he was going to retire before the Alps, but he's got so close to taking the lead in the green jersey competition. He won the sprint today soon after the start. He's now only 8 points off Hushoff. We might see him in action today when he comes down to the finish in Gap. And if he puts his hands on that green jersey, he might even start dreaming of Paris, because he's never been there yet.
Well, he hasn't, but let's bear in mind, Phil, that he is a great rider. You know, he was a great sprinter, and back in 2003 he won stages in all of the 3 Grand Tours. He won 6 stages in the Giro, 4 stages in the Tour de France, and then went on to get 5 stages in the Vuelta a España. So I think once he's got himself back into the Tour de France, if he thinks he can walk away from the Tour with the green jersey, he will keep going.
Now, I can never remember, he's either the 3rd or the 4th for the highest number of stages won in Grand Tours. First is Eddie Merckx, second is Mario Cipollini. Is it Battacchi next?
He would be 3rd, yeah.
He's 3rd. So, yes, he's a man that specialises in winning the stages of the Grand Tours. And we haven't seen, he's won 2, by the way, on this year's Tour de France as well.
Yeah, a little bit of contention in the first one when they said he took advantage of the sprints that happened left and right. Well, he came back a couple of days after that and showed everybody that he could still win the sprints, because there were no sprints, there were no crashes in the sprint in the second stage that he won. Well, despite the fact that we say this is an easy day, you just got a quick glimpse of the riders at the back end of the main field. Look at the way the wind is now starting to batter these riders. I think the reason they've turned off now is because they're starting to see that this is turning out into a very difficult day of racing. And they certainly do realize that they've had a race on their hands so far. We've got an awful long way through France, an awful long way to begin with through Holland and Belgium as well, to get ourselves right down into this middle part of the country. The start of the procession now down to the Pyrenees, where the race will then start to unfold and reveal who is going to be the big leader of the Tour de France. At the moment, we're looking at a 2-man fight between Contador and Schleck.
This is Dries Devenants, just near us camera in the blue. It has been quite a good race, this, for Quick Step, because they've had Sylvain Chavanel win 2 stages. They've had Jerome Pinot, I think, 6 days in the Maillot à Pois, which is the King of the Mountains jersey, and he's winning back today.
Yes, he has, with a very good sprint, a solid sprint and a brave move up at the top. He's separated now by a single point from Anthony Charteau, but that field battle there, I think, will continue on and on through the next week or so of the Tour de France. Mario Hertz, professional since 1996. He's trying to figure out now what is he going to do. The team manager in the car there will be giving him some advice a little bit later on, and they must be having some serious discussion on how Mario Hertz is going to get himself the win.
Well, he's about 4 kilometres, although it looks to me as though they're going uphill at the moment, but it's not officially the start. We'll see a big board to tell us that. About 4 kilometres to the Col du Tourmalet, and then 7.5 kilometres of climbing as the riders go up there. I mean, the leaders themselves don't look to be exactly charging along the highway today, but they are holding quite a big lead, and they know that 11 minutes is a good gap when you've only got 46 left to race, and there's no giant Col de la Madeleine waiting to slap you in the face.
Well, the sad thing about the profile on this race route, although they've only measured the final 7.5 kilometres of the Col du Tourmalet, it actually climbs up for about 7 kilometres. Before that, it's a long, long, winding road until they get to the point where they say 7.5 kilometres to go to the summit. That's not so good for the morale.
It's cruel, if you ask me. Serge Paulinho, normally at the side of the likes of Lance Armstrong, back in the main field. Lance lost his tour the other day, though. And now Paulinho looks as though he's been given the nod to look for a move today, and it's worked out for him. So the man who is often referred to as a super domestique to help the team is in with a chance, of the rare chance, we have to say, of going for the win himself, and he might be a danger from this breakaway.
No, almost certainly, but any which way this goes out towards the end, most of these riders have got an equal chance. At the moment, looking at the riders, the way their bodies look, the way their body language is talking, I would say everyone has got an equal chance of getting themselves a stage victory. It's the guy who has the biggest burning desire to win a stage in the Tour de France who's going to come up with the win, and that may be Mario Hertz, because he's getting towards the end of his career, and he knows opportunities like this don't come every day.
Just look at those pictures down into the valley below there. They're in the gorge, and our helicopter can't go down that low. It might have a problem getting out, but the camera's doing its best to focus in on the little figures of the Tour de France as they dodge between the white lines of the highway. There's no other sporting event in the world gives you a view of the countryside as this one does, and you know, it took France a long time to realize what they had to sell to all the tourists. Now they spend a lot of time and money showing you their country as well as the cycle race, and it works because this is such an international event now. The flags of Denmark, we've seen Luxembourg, we've seen Australia, the United States, they've all been flying today, and it's France's most famous holiday. It's the only other time they close the roads of the Champs-Élysées to celebrate Bastille Day, and in fact the only other time is for the arrival of the Tour de France.
And that's going to be another 10 days before we get back up there, and they will already be starting to assemble the tribune of honor for the riders to come onto the hallowed cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées. And that's a week on Sunday. But before we get there, there's a lot of battle still to be done on these roads. This is Sergio Paulinho, again, Portuguese rider on Lance Armstrong's Radio Shack squad. He too, you know, Phil, has got the ability to win this stage. He was second in the Olympic Games in Athens, and it was at that time that he was spotted by Johan Brunel, who said, this guy is a strong bike rider. We need him on his team to look after guys in the big high mountains of the Tour de France.
Nice little close-up there of Sergio Paulinho. These riders doing what we always refer to as bit and bit, or one-on-one. They just go through, do a little bit of pacemaking, then drop to the back, take some shelter, go back to the front. None of them making more effort than they have to, because they're starting to think amongst each other now, how are we going to beat the guy in front? They are friends only to keep away from the peloton. 11.25 minutes, it's going absolutely nowhere, the break, but it's not coming back, and that's all they're interested in.
What you just said there, Phil, they are friends for the moment. They will be friends until the first point that one of the riders in that leading group of 6 decides to make a move and decides to attack, because that's the moment when the allegiance and when the entente cordiale is broken, as soon as the first aggression of the day starts to come in. Just looking up at the top there, we get a chance to see this is a dramatic piece of countryside, and this is the small church, the tiny little church there, the Chapel of the Chicon, right up at the top. It's often known as the Church of the Mother. It's a small little church, and its construction goes back to around about the 11th or 12th century, and as its nickname indicates, it's a Romanesque style. It's got 3 vaulted bays and a semicircular asp, and it really is quite remarkable. It was listed as a national monument in France going back to 1927.
Lovely little church. Not much room for parking, though, I thought. As the riders continue here, this is the champion of Denmark on the front now. His turn to do a little bit of pacemaking here. Nicky Sorensen won his title the week before the Tour de France commenced, as all the national titles are on that weekend, last weekend of June. Fabian Cancellara on the shoulder behind there, on the left of our picture with the dark glasses on. He's enjoying his return now to being a super domestique, having led the Tour de France very early on. Amazingly, we've only had 3 leaders of the Tour de France. It all started with Cancellara, then it switched briefly to Chavanel. Next day, Cancellara took it back, and then after 4 days, Chavanel took it back off Cancellara, and the very next day, Cadel Evans took it away from Chavanel. And then after the rest day this week, Andy Schleck became the latest leader, so that makes 4 actually since the race left in Rotterdam. I think the record is 5 different leaders, 8 in modern times in the Tour de France.
8 or 9.
I'm going with 8.
Okay.
All emails must be addressed to Paul Sherwin, not to me. I'm going with 8. I think it's 8. And 8 stage wins is the most as well. Eddie Merckx and Freddie Mertens hold that privilege. Post-war I'm talking now, by the way. A little bit of a change of tyre, but a routine change. It shouldn't be a problem. Quickly into the swing of things, Pavel Brutz. He's the lone break expert. If he ever gets a chance to break away, he hasn't been seen much on our cameras at all as an attacking rider. He's a Russian cyclist, but he's very strong, and if he sees his chance, he'll look to go it alone. Meanwhile, the long silence from Paul Sherwin is he's now got 4 bucks out to try and prove me wrong here, so he may not come back for a while.
Well, it's a good day to go through the books, because there's been an awful lot to talk about on the road through the Alps here this afternoon. I've told you all about the Alpine peaks. I've told you about Napoleon. In fact, a little bit later on, I've got another story about Napoleon, but I'm going to hold that in my back pocket just in case the race starts in earnest.
It will. See. No, well, look, we've got 2 races in all seriousness. As we come into these closing kilometres, it may happen. We start the real climb of the Noyon in about 2 kilometres, maybe less. But there will be a big race from the bunch for 7th place because of the green jersey competition. There's only 8 points separating Thor Hushovd, the leader, with Alessandro Petacchi. I'm not sure Mark Cavendish is interested now. He doesn't seem to be. He lost this in the first few days of the Tour, so he'll look for stages. It's a Mark Cavendish day tomorrow, I think. He will really be looking for the win. But in the green jersey competition, Thor Hushovd has 128 points and Alessandro Petacchi has 120. And Robin McEwen's in it as well. He's lying third. He's won it 3 times, the Aussie. He's got 107 points. So we will see a very good sprint for the 7th place finish today. The Tour de France on stage 10 here. We're looking at the 6 men who've called it right today for sure. 4 did, 2 caught up. The man in blue, Pierre Roland, the man at the back, Maxime Bouet. They quickly scampered across to the lead. Well, not quickly. It took them 20 kilometres to catch up. Good decision because they're French and it's Bastille Day, and there's no way this break will be caught. They've come inside now the 11-minute marker. They've been out to almost 12, but there's only 40 kilometres left to race. And the only problem they've got right now is the climb here on the Col du Tourmalet. Now, having checked all the record books here, and Paul Sherwin is gloating, I can tell you, we had 9 leaders in the famous Tour of Stephen Roche. Jelle Nijdam, I always used to say it was a great name for the leader of the Tour. Jelle Nijdam is a great Dutchman. And then we had Pierre Secchi, Mackler, Motte, Gaillon. Motte took it back. Then Jean-Francois Bernard took it. Pedro Delgado took it, and in the end the great Irish cyclist Stephen Roche kept it, and he took it away with him. First and only Irish winner. In 2006, Paul, a couple of wins. Hushovd opened up with the prologue win. George Hincapie got it. Hushovd again. Then came Bonin, Sergei Honshaw, Cyril Dessel, Floyd Landis, Oscar Pereiro, Landis again, and Pereiro, and that's 10. But I was thinking of 8 different leaders, and there's more than that there, and there's more than that in 87. I'm going to call that a draw.
So we go 50-50 on that one.
50-50.
So you're paying for dinner tonight?
Well, I'll order it. You pay for it. That's 50-50, isn't it?
That'll do. 6.5 kilometres to go to the top of the Col du Tourmalet. Anyway, these guys, somebody in this breakaway, Phil, has got to be starting to get into his mind the idea that he's going to win a stage in the Tour de France. There are two guys who would almost lay down their arms to win, and that's the two Frenchmen in this breakaway. Maxime Bouet, who is the rider just at the front there for AG2R, and the other rider, Pierre Roland, for B-Box Bouygues Telecom. Well, they would love to join one of the 13 riders from France who have won on Bastille Day, but it's going to be a tall order against some very clever riders, guys like Mario Arts and Vasily Kirienka.
Also thinking, you know, a good move by Castepon. They've made sure they put a man in this breakaway in the case of Kirienka, because Castepon yesterday, with 3 men in the action all day, took the lead in the team race. That's why they're wearing those yellow numbers. And by putting a man in the breakaway today, they're certainly assured they will not be losing that lead, because he will get the same time as those boys up front, and the others will get the same time as the peloton. So that is a good move. Now, here's one of the artists of the Alps. Look at that.
Well, that is amazing piece of artwork that has been brought out here. But the ladies at the end, I'm not sure
I've never
what team
seen
they
any
race
of those
for.
ever in the peloton of the Tour de France. Nowhere to pin the numbers. Right, we're looking at the main peloton here in the Tour de France. Nicky Sorensen on the right. But there's going to be 2 races today, one for the stage win, one for the peloton win, to see if Hushoff can keep his lead in the green jersey. He could lose it today if he gets himself out of position, and he could pass over to Alessandro Petacchi. Tomorrow we start on the hills. We climb the last alpine climb tomorrow, and that takes us out of the Alps and into the department of the Drôme, and then it gets pretty flat. And if Mark Cavendish can get over the climb, it's not a steep climb really, then he's going to start thinking of a possible stage win for him. Number 3 it would be if he can get it.
Well, the thing is, you kind of forget about the sprinters during the big alpine stages, the stages where the mountain climbers come out and do battle, but it's not easy for the sprinters just to stay in the bike race. They have this inability to climb, and it's all to do with the power to weight ratios. Climbers are usually a much slightly built person, and they have an easier ability to get up the climbs, whereas the sprinters are usually stocky and heavier set, although Mark Cavendish is not exactly the biggest guy in the world. But the big sprinters like Thor Hushoff have got to carry 85 kilos over the mountains compared to some of the climbers who weigh in sometimes inside of the 50-kilo mark. So there's a big difference in the weight they have to drag over the mountains.
Now, the leaders have been on the climb for 2 kilometers now, but as Paul has worked out, they've been climbing steadily for the last 10 kilometers as they get up towards the end of this valley and pop over the end, and then we'll start working our way down into the finishing gap. And the tar is melting on the roads today, as we've heard. So we've already had emails coming in saying the riders where these spectators have been standing have actually been sounding like they're pedaling through water because of the liquidity on the surface of the tar.
And it makes it a lot more difficult as well, and it's just one of the things to toughen up the race here this afternoon, because the riders have an expression. They say, I felt like I was stuck to the road, and that's exactly what they mean. They felt that they were riding through water, they were riding through mud. You can see it just to the left-hand side there of the road. That was a very good example of just what it looks like when the tar starts to melt on the pavement surface here in these roads of France. And not only is it dangerous on the descent, it's really hard to ride up.
Very, I would imagine. Well, we're still inside 11 minutes, but these boys again are both pedaling at the same speed once more now. 38 kilometers to go.
So, crossing over one of the little tributaries of the big river in this area, and that, of course, is the River Drac, which winds its way down from where we are here down into the Isère eventually, and then on up in.
Up to
the Emperor Napoleon left to this county of the Haute Alps in acknowledgement for the welcome that was extended to him when he marched back on his return from the island of Elba.
There we go. There'll be questions asked on all of this information we're giving you at the end of the program, so stand by with a pen and paper. 4.5 kilometers to go. Nobody has tried to lift this pace at all. I wonder if they're nervous. They might think that as there's only 6 of them, 34 kilometers to go over the top might be just a little bit too far. There is a sprint which comes at 21 kilometers to go, a chance to push on at that point. And the finish itself is a pretty nice finish coming here into Gap, isn't it?
It's a good wide boulevard. It's not complicated at all. There's nothing too much to worry about for the guys. There's a traffic circle at a kilometre to go, but I'm not expecting to see a massive big bunch coming in here. Although if they do remain together like that, there will be a very big important sprint fill for 7th place, because the 7th place finish, if Thor Hushoff doesn't put in a good sprint towards the end of the day, it could see the lead in the King of the Sprints competition move across to the shoulders of Alessandro Petacchi.
Once again, our helicopter picks up the riders right down, tucked under the rocks here of the Alps. Nobody bothered to come. It's all got to be Saxo Bank today as they ride on the front. And the Schleck. Oh, what's happened here on the bridge? I'm not sure. That's not the place to crash. That's a long way down there. I think they literally ran out of road.
Yeah, it's a very narrow bridge which the riders
have to queue to get in.
They've had to queue to get around the corner there. This is a typical. That's certainly somewhere you didn't want to drop into.
No, you did not. And but they got so narrow over the bridge, one-way traffic, they had to slow down.
That's a very famous pass that the riders went over there. And at some points throughout this gorge, the distance between the walls is only a single metre between either side of the cliff faces.
I think we can verify that now, Paul. As we've seen the peloton there, all have to stop and give way as they went through that. Sitting at the back, the champion of France, Thomas Voigtler. I'm not too sure how he's going in the Tour de France this year. He's normally a very aggressive rider, and I think he might be feeling the pace just a little bit, so he'll welcome this slower pace today, that's for sure.
So Saxo Bank adopting the position they will have to adopt as long as their man Andy Schleck is in the lead in this bike race, as we look at the arrière du peloton, where it is the most difficult to ride, as this has turned out to be a rather difficult day for many people in the saddle. The French national champion sitting at the back here. I don't think he's suffering sitting here. I think this man, Thomas Voigtler, is planning on something big on one of the other stages, and he's just trying to conserve as much energy as possible for one big push to try and get himself a little bit of glory on one of the individual stages. He would like to try and get himself a stage victory in the Tour de France with the national champion's jersey on his back. So we're climbing away out of this valley, the valley of the Drac, over towards the top of the Col du Tourmalet at 1,600 meters in altitude, and then we will start to drop down into the outskirts of the city of Gap, and that's where the race will end this afternoon. It's been a long day. You look how long that line is and just think what sort of job the men from Saxo Bank have been doing at the front end of the main field. They have been riding along today at an average speed of around about 40 kilometers an hour, and it will be a very heavy body that these guys will drag up to their hotel bedrooms at the end of the day, because it has been extremely hot. Now there's a bit of a problem here. This is the slopes of the climb, and this is the first time we've seen any weakness at all, and this is Maxime Bouet, and he's got to try and stay in contact here this afternoon. Most of the pacemaking on the front now is Dries Devenens. He knows he's got around about 3.5 kilometers to go to the summit. He knows this is a great opportunity for France as the main field now start to come up to the early slopes of the climb. 7 kilometers to go to the summit as they take on board a few drinks. They will have taken on board an awful amount of fluid this afternoon, as much as 8 to 10 kilos. Not all of it will have been ingested, but a lot of it will have just been poured over their heads to try and keep them cool in the battle against the heat.
Well, as the peloton here meander through this stunning scenery, it's still over 11 minutes to go. We're now at 36.8 kilometers. That's for the leaders, remember. They've got 2.5 kilometers to climb. These boys being at 11 minutes are probably not far short of being, it sounds better this way, 5 miles behind. What's happening there, Paul? They're not going very far.
Well, they're not going very far, but what they're trying to do, this is a new form of renewable energy that's been introduced into France. You put a man on a bicycle at the side of the road with a dynamo, and you can keep a light going for around about 2 hours. Do you believe that?
Well,
it was a good excuse, though, wasn't it?
That was excellent. Did you just wait? Did you make that up?
Yes, I did.
Oh, right. Oh, I feel better now. Yes, well, I'm sure one day they can harness all of the energy of the Tour de France. You may as well charge up the electricity right around the country as we're going around it for 3 weeks. Now, these are the leaders being cheered all the way. It's a nice crowd on this climb, isn't it, the Col du Tourmalet? And we're not that far from Gap, of course, now. Riders will drop down there in just on 20 miles.
These guys, Phil, will have made note that Maxime Bouet, the rider just at the back there with the brown shorts from AG2R Le Mondial, he's had a hard time on the slopes of this climb, and they will be thinking about there is another climber before we get down to the finish, which is not categorized, but it is just as good a launch pad to try and get clear off the front end of the main field as this one. They will have noticed Bouet is suffering a fraction, so they will maybe try a little acceleration later on to see if they can dislodge him from the group, increasing somebody's chances of getting a stage victory at the Tour.
Well, he's only 23 years of age. He's into his second Tour de France, though, now. He started very young at 22, so he's a rider that's well thought of, with a bright future to have made the team selection at 22 years of age, and he's in his second Tour now. This is the peloton. One or two teams coming to the front now to help out Saxo Bank, because they're thinking of other things, not least the finish for their sprinters. And Rabobank moving up, and they're having a good Tour, Rabobank, with Gesink in the white jersey second place and Menchoff moving up in the top 4.
But you can see how some of the team leaders are taking this a little bit more seriously. Astana have moved a couple of guys up to the front end of the main field, just in case anybody thinks of launching a little move to try and split the main field on the run in towards the finish. Catching out Alberto Contador. This is the arrière du peloton, the back end of the main field, and it looks to me as if there will be a lot of survivors on today's stage. I can still see David Miller sitting over there just to the right-hand side, number 57. He finished last on the stage yesterday. He rode almost the whole stage of the Tour de France on his own, finishing 42 minutes behind the overall winner on the stage. And that was after a very bad back problem that he's got. And he's trying to nurse himself through the mountains, trying to survive. And that's the important thing about this race. This is a race that everybody wants to finish. Nobody wants to abandon the Tour de France. It's as if you start a great expedition and you attempt to find the source of the Nile, or whether you want to conquer Mount Everest. You don't want to get halfway through an exhibition like that and say, well, I think I'll give up. You do not do that at the Tour de France. This is such a special event. So the main field sticking together on the slopes of the Noyer.
There's the crowd all applauding the leaders of the Tour de France. They've been out front since the 36th kilometre. They've got just about the same distance now to go down to the finishing gap. Nobody making a move here. They're all feeling it's a little bit too far from home to start trying to ride by yourself.
No, but nobody's shown any real sign of wanting to get off the front end of the group, and maybe the slopes of this climb are not quite steep enough for somebody like Sergio Paulinho to try. You can see Roland just looking over to see what the situation is, and they all, I think, know that Maxime Bouet is having a hard time on these final kilometres of the Col du Noyer.
And he's going to have to just grit his teeth here. He's not far from the top. He's about a mile or 1.6 kilometres here. So he's just got to hang on just for a moment longer. Once the team cars go by him, the elastic is stretching. It's very, very hard. I mean, to us mere mortals, they've been out in front now, Paul, for well over 100 kilometres, 110 kilometres, and look, he's gone.
Well, he's popped. You know, he can hold on, and what he's got to try and do now is hope that he can get over the top with a deficit of 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and he's still got a good chance of pulling himself back into the main field. I would say Sergio Paulinho at the back here, Phil, is looking a little bit frisky now. He's out of the saddle. He looks fluid. He doesn't look as if he's showing any of the signs of this very long day. But the man doing the tempo making on the front, Mario Ertz, will feel more and more confidence as he gets closer to the finish.
Well, it is so hot out here, and those boys have been under pressure. They've built an 11-minute lead over the peloton. And so they've used a lot of energy today to keep that. And Bouet has decided he can't hold it any longer. He might get back, we'll see. But you can see, looking at the peloton now, that's a quicker tempo they've got going. They know, using the slopes of the Noyer, they will cut into that lead. They're not thinking of catching the breakaways. It really is of no interest. But they will reduce that 11-minute gap for sure now.
Well, Roland has come to the front, and he's probably decided the better part of valor is to set the tempo himself, to try and prevent anybody else from making a move and attacking from behind him. And a little bit further back, you see here now this guy, he realizes this is the big chance. He just needs to stay in contact with that group, and he's pulling himself inside out here to try and get round the corner, just to hope that he can stay within 30 seconds and try and catch them back up on the descent.
I think he's going to get back personally. He's got half a kilometre to hang on. What does this one say? 1 kilometre, so the mileage isn't quite the same as our book. They've got 1 kilometre now to climb up to the summit, and he's still hanging in. That'll give him the encouragement he wants now. Look at the acceleration here. He knows if he can just hold them within range, he can come back to them on the descent. Well, might come back before the top.
Well, he might do, you know, because he will be pushed on by the fact that this is a very special day for France. This is Bastille Day, le 14 juillet. This is the day of fireworks. There were some fireworks last night. He's hoping to be the man who sets off the fireworks here this afternoon. But to do that, he's got to get back into contention with that leading group. He doesn't have to make the junction before the top, because if you're a good climber and a good descender, you can pull back 15 or 20 seconds very, very quickly within the first 500 meters of the start of the descent.
Now again, no real reason for anybody to sprint at the top, but Mario Hertz has done pretty well today. He won the Côte de l'Afrique, he won the Côte de Terrasse, and he's been building his King of the Mountains points, but he started a long way behind the leaders. But he could jump into the top 10, and you never know what the future holds. He's been a very good rider for the overall. Here we come. Come on, Maxime. One big final effort and you're on.
Well, that's a great, courageous effort by this man. I think any other race in the world, Phil, that he would never have done that. He wouldn't have pulled himself back into the lead. He went through a very bad patch, but I hate to be the bringer of doom and the bad messages I always do. There's another climb after this one, which doesn't actually carry a categorization.
And it looks as though this really does kick towards the end. Can we see it? No, we can't. We've cut away. It looks as though it did kick up there. So as the riders continue up here, there's the Canadian flags again. I think they're following the Tour de France this year. The boys of Canada. We've got a couple of Canadians riding pretty well in this race, enjoying the Tour de France. It's really the international race these days, especially bringing all the English-speaking nations.
Well, and just a little bit further up, maybe 300 or 400 meters to go to the top of the climb, and Bouet is really doing everything he can to stay in contact here, while Hertz at the front in the white jersey of Omega Pharma Lotto, he just sits there and plugs away at a good tempo. Moving up the outside at Radio Shack. I think this is just a question of somebody positioning themselves to the front end of the main field, but you might have noticed how very quickly the rider from Astana there was paying attention.
Looks as though Saxo are getting themselves back in the front, but they've got help from Rabobank for the first time for many years. 2 riders in contention with Rabobank. Denny Menchoff's up to 4th overall. Robert Gessing is up to 7th. And the big mountains are to come. Both can climb, so there's every reason to start dreaming of a high finish in the Tour de France. Are we going to get a little sprint here? The top must be imminent. It must be just on the brow there.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mario Hertz have another little dig at this. This is a second category climb, so as it's the final climb of the day, the points will be double, and that will give 20 points for the first man to go over the top. So that means that Mario Hertz has eaten away at the points in the King of the Mountains classification here this afternoon, and he will start to climb nicely up the overall standings in that competition.
So it's Hertz, Deverens and Paulinho, and because it is the last climb of the day, if it's ranked second, first or category, the last climb of the day carries double points.
Now it's the start of this descent, but this is not the descent all the way down to the finish. They drop down into the next sprint point of the day, and that just comes at around about 158 kilometers covered in the small town of La Fare-en-Champsaur. And then after that, nastily, there is another big dig up towards the finish before then plunging down into the city of Gap. And if you want to see a technical descent, this is a fine one.
I think we should have come up it the other way. This looks a brute of a climb this way up, doesn't it?
I always remember that you used to be a race organizer. You still are.
Well, looking down into the valley of, that's why it's such an aptly named city, Gap. It drops right down in the valley with the Alps all around it. It is a super place to come and visit here because the scenery around. But now it's a question of your nerve on the way down, and Bouet here is looking as though he's not too clever at descending. He's lying off the back by a little distance, or maybe he was just an hitch in the sprint.
Yeah, I think he's just going to take his time here and make sure he picks the lines around. There's no safety nets on the descents like this. If you see looking over to the left, the drop off there is a good 200 or 300 meters. In fact, he's not a very good descender. He's a little bit, he's panicking a fraction.
He took his foot clean off the pedal there. The result of the climb overall, Pinot won't be damaged at all. He's got 91 points to 90 as of the last climb. None of these boys affecting the destiny of Polka Dot tonight.
Well, as an ex-professional bike rider, I've got to say this is a fabulous descent, one that I would certainly enjoy myself. But the man sitting at the back here, Maxime Bouet, is not enjoying it at all. He keeps pulling his foot out. He's obviously not feeling very confident at all as he sits here in 6th position. The man doing the pacemaking on the front, a seasoned professional, is Mario Ertz of Belgium. And this could cause a little bit of consternation when the main field starts to get up to the top, because we could see this race split up on the descent if somebody decides to take a flyer off the front of the peloton.
Oh, that's a, yeah, might. That'd be nice. Let's see what happens there. I don't know who's available to do that at this stage of the day, but it's still going to be a problem for the peloton with this big bunch going down those hairpin bends today. Normally, on a flat-out day in the mountains, they will be well split up, but that's not the case today. Apparently, Bastille Day's national holiday has spread to the peloton of the Tour de France today, and they've all gone on holiday. Just 6 riders will decide the winner of the stage today. That's for sure now. As the cameras wander around the high Alps now, are beginning to lose the high Alps. Tomorrow we'll be out of them, but today it is 6 riders who are running now to the finish in gap, and there's no one going to see them before the finish. The gap is holding. In fact, it's going away again. Looking at the slopes here of the Col du Tourmalet, the peloton are approximately, and I'll say it in miles because it sounds more, 5 miles behind those 6 leaders at the moment.
Yes, but there's still the black and white jerseys of Team Saxo Bank on the front. But you might have noticed, probably for the first time this afternoon, as some of the other contenders are moving up to the front end, because I think they've been getting the information, Phil, that the descent is rather tricky. And the wind is rather tricky too, because those flags are straight out. And we're not really surprised today to see a huge numbers of the bleu, blanc, rouge, the blue, white and red of France, because after all, it is their national holiday.
Yes, and the man reflecting the yellow of the sun is Andy Schleck in his first day in yellow. It's been a very, very memorable one. The peloton getting a huge round of applause here, even though these fans will understand the Tour de France and what time means. And they're seeing this peloton come through. 11 3/4 minutes behind. There's the Union flag on the left of our picture as well for Great Britain. Bradley Wiggins still very much in this race, but it's been a rough crossing for him. One could say all the way, in fact, from Rotterdam, where his prologue time trial wasn't the sharpest.
It is rather sad to see, Phil, that a lot of people don't understand that there's a right way up and a wrong way up for the Union flag, because that one was actually upside down, and that's a sign of distress.
Oh my goodness me. Well, then maybe it's for poor old David Miller, because he's riding injured at the moment, and let's hope he recovers on a day like today, where the peloton have stayed together all day. No attacks in anger. There will be a terrific sprint, there's no doubt about that, for 7th place, simply because there's green jersey points at stake, and it's getting close at the top there.
So over the top of the climb now, the start of this final little descent down into the sprint point of La Fin-en-Champsaur, and then they've got this climb which is around about 5 kilometers long, but it's not a categorized climb. And they'll start this descent, this little bit of a descent, which is not too much to worry about, it into the outskirts of town. There are 14 points left behind for the sprints, and that's going to be extremely important, because there's 8 points to separate Thor Hushovd, and this is a little move coming across here from the main field, because this is Christophe Moreau, and he's actually just going out for some King of the Mountains points.
Well, this is Christophe Moreau, who's decided to try and go, because it's important for the team race if he got clear.
Well, I think more importantly, Phil, bear in mind that he's in 3rd place in the King of the Mountains classification. He probably thinks there's a few points left over, but I'd just like to tell him that there's only 6 points on a second category climb, so he's actually wasting a little bit of time. But Jaroslav Popovic came straight across to mark him.
Just to keep an eye on him, and tricky little move, this. The team Radio Shack and Case de Pon are only separated by, believe this, 31 seconds in the team race. And they've both got a man in the break, which is important. And so because Case de Pon has attacked, they've sent a Radio Shack rider with him. So at the moment, they've still got 31 second separation in the team race.
Bear in mind, this is amazing how you can bounce back in a race, because Jaroslav Popovic, he was on the ground in the early part of this race, and the way he picked himself up, I wasn't even sure he was going to get onto his bike again, yet alone get into the main field, and yet alone chase down Christophe Moreau over the top of this climb. 7th place over the top of the climb for Christophe Moreau, and I have to announce to him, sorry Christophe, but there aren't any points.
Well, I honestly think he thinks there are, and he's gone over the top there with Popovic. He's the oldest man in the race, Christophe Moreau, 39 years of age. Announced his retirement on the rest day in Morzine-Avoriaz at the end of the season. He's going to do what they call the post-race circuit races. They call them criteriums. They get highly paid to ride them, the crowd paid to watch them, and they really do put on a show all over Western Europe. There's the peloton, all the Saxo Bank boys of Andy Schleck, led by Stuart O'Grady, Fabian Cancellara, Jens Voigt. And the crowd have waited a long time to cheer the pack over today.
Well, I think nearly everybody will finish in the main pack at the end of the day, as long as there isn't a major sort out on this descent, which is a very tricky descent. And hopefully nobody will take too many risks, because if you get a chance to look at this, this is really one of the most dramatic descents I think we've had on the tour so far this year.
Let's see how they handle it. I don't think they're going to do anything silly on the way down here. I can hear the race radio telling them that it's very sinuous on the way down. Please warn the riders, so we'll see. Queuing up for that right-hander. Then there'll be a sharp left-hander. The leaders will want to see the way down, and they'll keep their noses clean. They're not interested in chasing down anybody, so there's no reason to take chances today.
No, not at all. And I think Team Saxo Bank will just sit at the front and set the tempo to prevent anybody trying to come forward and taking a dive off the front end of the main field. Sitting comfortably in third place is the yellow jersey on the shoulders of Andy Schleck. He's got through day one, at least for the moment, with the yellow jersey comfortably on his shoulders.
The leaders are well under now, the 1.5 kilometres under the 25 to go banner, as Andy Schleck also with his team all around him and keep him clean, so if there's any problems they'll look after him.
Yep, there you can see sitting comfortably there as Andy Schleck is in the slipstream of his teammates, not far from the front ender. Lance Armstrong, Levi Leipheimer, Alberto Contador, George Hincapie, all of the big names are riding at the front end of the peloton. There's the green jersey there on the shoulders of Thor Hushovd. That's where we're heading down to, the Valley of Gap, and there is still one more tiny little climb on the run in towards the finish, which may well be the launch pad that somebody is going to use to try and get themselves a victory from that leading group of 6 riders. There's about 30 seconds advantage between Christophe Moreau and Jaroslav Popovic, and a little marking there taking place for the team competition, which has Team Case d'Epargne separated by just 31 seconds from Team Saxo Bank. Race distances, now we're looking at just 22 kilometres to go for the leading group of 6 as they continue down this group, and nobody yet has shown any signs of being stronger, although the first man to show the slightest sign of weakness was Maxime Bouet, the French rider from AG2R La Mondiale. You can see just how technical this descent is, stretched out into a very big long line. You certainly wouldn't want to have a mechanical incident at this point, because it would take you an awful long time to wait for the team car.
Well, no problems at all. They're all regrouped. They're more or less running off this climb now, and the gap has actually gone up, and the descent is being made by the peloton as well. Been a long descent this. It was more than the way up, I think, so it's been about an 8-kilometre drop down, because the leaders here have now done over 1.5 kilometres on the bunch, rather, on the way down. They're still going through the steep part of the bend. Over in the valley there is the finish of Gap today.
Anthony Roux sitting at the back end of the main field. I wonder how the Sky team manager is feeling going down a descent like this, because Sean Yates used to be one of the best descenders in the world, and I would say just looking at the technical nature of this descent, I would reckon if Yates was behind the field, he could probably bridge a good 2 to 2.5 minutes gap on a descent like this.
Yes, well, I've sat in a car with Paul behind Sean Yates in his great days and seen him clock 105 kilometres an hour. With the bend that was coming up, I was more worried about me in the car than Yates on the bike. This is Stewie O'Grady. He's a master artist at just doing what, steady the team down, keep them under control, always checking to make sure the yellow jersey is there, he's not in distress from an accident rather than effort today, I must say. Almost smiling at the camera there.
Well, O'Grady seems pretty happy. He wasn't even sure until the Tour of Switzerland whether or not he was going to make the selection for the Tour de France squad, because he broke his collarbone in a nasty accident in the Amgen Tour of California. But he did bounce back, and he got himself back into the team selection for the Tour de France and for Team Saxo Bank. 1,000 meters to go now for the final sprint point of the day, as the riders make them way into the middle of the small town here of La Fare en Champsaur. town which itself is just 20 kilometres to go to the finish.
That'll be the next banner after the sprint banner. So again, we don't anticipate a sprint. There's no reason to. There is €400, and you'll have to work that out in your own currency. €400 prize for the first rider over the line. Now it looks as though Moreau has kept on going here. No, they're bringing him back now.
Well, I think he thought about going off to get himself a couple of points just in case he'd miscalculated and hadn't read the book properly. And I think now he realizes he doesn't need to waste too much energy. He's 39 years of age. He's riding the Tour de France for the 15th time. He knows exactly how to ride a race like the Tour de France. You do not waste any energy at all on a breakaway move like that, especially when you know what's on the horizon and what's on the horizon for his team, Team Case d'Epargne.
Well, they're coming up to the sprint, and there's the sign just ahead of 20k to go.
So Maxime Bouet just dropping back here. Pierre Rolland is just having a quick word with his compatriot here to see how he's feeling. And he said he's not going to come through at all now. He's been dropped once on the climb, and they realize there is still another climb to go in about 4 or 5 kilometers time. It's not a massive climb. It's not even categorized, but it does go up for around about 5 kilometers. Everybody else prepared to keep the pace making. Bouet just sitting at the back. Sergio Paulinho from Team Radio Shack. Still, nobody has shown any sign of coming up with a plan to try and get themselves a victory here this afternoon. We're just looking at Ertz on the front. As I said, he's been a successful professional bike rider, turned professional way back in 1996, but only ever won 4 career victories.
So they're now in a situation of just 20 kilometers to go. That's about 12 miles to the finish. These boys will not be staying friends for much longer, and the peloton have taken back Christophe Moreau as well. We're looking at the peloton. They're visibly going quite quickly now. They're running away from the lower slopes of the Col du Tourmalet. The leaders are just under 17 kilometers to go. We've hit 12 minutes now. So it's going to be a bit of a wait for the peloton when we get into gap, but there's still, Paul, no indication in that breakaway as to who can win today.
No, there isn't. The man who seems to be the weakest is Maxime Bouet, but if they don't get rid of him, he's not too bad as a sprinter when it comes down towards the end, and they will be probably thinking about that. Stuart O'Grady, just a little sign on his hand there indicating we've got this left-hand bend. Just be careful and send the message back down through the main field. Once again, the Team Saxo Bank have done the job. They've sat at the front end of the peloton. They've set the tempo when they needed to. They've allowed a non-dangerous break to form off the front end of the main field. They've given them some freedom. They've given them 12 minutes of freedom, but that's not going to change the look of the overall classification at all.
But if they win by 12 minutes, Kirienka will be exactly 1 hour behind the leader of the Tour de France, because at the moment he's 1 hour 12 minutes. A little chat at the car now. Now then. My tip to win, Pierre Rolland. That's probably the voice of doom on poor Pierre, explaining the run into him, what to do.
Well, not necessarily.
He looks keen and strong, I have to say, for him, and that B-box, it will be a huge victory for this French team.
Well, they've looked for the breakaway, Phil, on a number of occasions during the tour. They were the ones who really toughened up the stage to the Station des Russes, and they set their riders on the front end of the main field, and that tempo that they set as a team demolished a lot of people when we came up to the final climb of the day. He won himself this year a stage of this circuit of Lorraine. He's only won 3 victories in his career, but he's a young rider, just 23 years of age. He will be dying to win a stage of the Tour de France. He will have a burning desire here. He doesn't want to ride behind Bouet there, because Bouet may well gap him on the next little incline up here.
Well, France are having a terrific Tour de France. They've won more stages, 3 in fact, than any other nation in the race. So why not make it on Bastille Day today? This is the main field. They're passing through. They're about looking for the 20 kilometers to go, because they're coming through the town of La Font-Chamseau. As they pass the nice church here, Saint-Martin-du-Tour. But they've lost interest today. Can't blame them, but this has been an incredibly competitive Tour de France this year, and they have always been knocked around by the road racing conditions, a lot of them having fallen off. Crowd are enjoying the sights anyway of the Tour de France, passing through the region once again. the high mountains of the Tour. Not quite as high today as they were yesterday, and they get even lower down tomorrow. Here's the attack started. Nobody wants to take it all down to the line. I think Mario Oertz has opened it up.
Yeah, Mario Oertz is the man who decided to take the move there. He is an extremely experienced professional bike rider. He waited for a difficult part of the course. He was looking at the opposition, and he knows that if he wants to win this race, he has to win it on his own. But the man taking up the pacemaking behind is also a very crafty bike rider. That's a Kirienka.
Yes, Kirienka is a rookie as far as the Tour de France is concerned, but he's on the giant Case Depend team. He has decided, and I think he is the man that could win this stage if it all came together. But what the attack has done, it's completely destroyed Maxime Bouet here. He's been totally detached now because the referees are calling all the cars past him. So he's left now. He'll finish in 6th place today. The peloton won't get him, not with nearly 12 minutes. And there's a Deverens now going as well.
Well, this is the Belgian 1-2 here. Dries Deverens has gone straight over the top, and now it's up to Kirienka to go again. And watch out for Mario Oertz. He's looking across at Pierre Roland, and he's saying to the Frenchman, right, mate, you want to win on Bastille Day, you'd better close that gap down, because I've just made a very big, hard effort to try and win the stage.
Yes, Mario Oertz there has made Pierre Roland go round him. But that was a Belgian 1-2. They're on different teams, but they're deadly rivals in Belgium. They're always in the newspapers for their rivalry. The Belgian Lotto team against the Belgian Quick-Step team. And Quick-Step so far have won 2 stages of this Tour. Well, there it is, and it's all up against Kirienka to make it now. Nobody seems willing. That was a good attack by Dries Deverens.
A very hard attack by the Belgian rider here, Dries Deverens. Now, in the past, Phil, Gap has hosted the finish of the Tour de France on 19 occasions. 6 of those victories go to France, 5 to Italy, and 4 to Belgium. Now, I wonder if this man here is going to make it 5 for Belgium, as he has really opened up the gap.
Well, he's now trying to hold on. One thing is opening the gap. The second thing is holding it as the heart catches up with the lungs and the boys recover behind. Then they can start to chase organised again. Well, at the moment, Mario Oertz and Pierre Roland.
They're in 5th and 6th position on the road, just up the road ahead of them.
4th and 5th.
They're 4th and 5th. The 2nd and 3rd here is Kirienka and Sergio Paulinho, but they're slowly dragging themselves back there to Dries Deverens. Now, watch out for Paulinho. He's not a great winner, but he's a very good tactician. 2nd in the Olympic Games in Athens. Deverens here is at the front of the race. He hasn't won a race so far this season, but he did win a very big stage of the Tour of Austria last year, and Paulinho now is opening the gap on Kirienka.
Tour of Austria having always runs concurrently with the Tour de France, and just been won by Ricardo Rico, despite the fact he broke his nose the day before and hit the back of a car. He still managed to finish.
Watch for this,
race.
He's over the top.
There he goes, Paulinho. Now, this is a great move by Radio Shack. We very rarely see Lance Armstrong's team in the breakaways on the attack, but because Armstrong's lost his chance and they're protecting Leipheimer, it looks as though today they've given the nod to Paulinho to go, and he's gone, and that's a very good move.
Yes, but Kirienka has seen that move, and he's now realized this is the move, this is the winning move, and he's now starting to see whether or not he can pull back the silver medalist from the Athens Olympic Games, Sergio Paulinho, teammate of Armstrong. Yes, 34th overall in the Tour de France last year, but a very, very good domestique.
He's rarely a winner, this man. His job on the teams, but he keeps his job on the top teams because of his immense strength to help his team leader. And that's why he made the cut on Radio Shack, and they had a lot of riders to choose from. And that's why he came into the Tour de France with Lance Armstrong. But today, he's been given his chance to try and win for himself. And the only man, it seems, at the moment who's going to cause problems to that idea is Vasily Kirienka. And he's pedalled back up to the side of Paulinho.
Well, Kirienka's pedigree really is that of an individual time trialist. He hasn't won a race either for the last 2 years, and he's going straight over the top again. But I think the Portuguese rider here, Paulinho, is very clever. He knew and was expecting that and went straight onto the wheel of Kirienka.
Well, the peloton, and we're not showing it, the peloton at the moment, our French television cameras, because these are the attacks for the win at the front. We have plenty of time to see the peloton after these boys finish down in gap. 12:03, they're still pulling away.
Well, you're looking here at Portugal in 2nd position, Belarus in 1st position, and a little bit further down the road, the man who made the most blistering attack here, Dries Deverens, in the 3rd place on the road. He's looking for about 10 seconds on those 2 leaders.
They've led the race today for 4 hours and 20 minutes, these leaders, and now it's come time to fall out with one another and race for the victory. We're just peaking out at the high point of this section of the course now. Then we'll start to descend. They'll be a little bit twisty, but it won't be terribly dangerous descents now.
This descent is not going to be as tricky as the last one, so I would expect they will go down the descent together. But what they do need to do is they need to consolidate their effort to keep the advantage over the three-man chasing group now. Now you can see there that Mario Ertz has recovered after his very solid attack early on. He's got himself back into this race. He won't give up now. He will still have that dream of trying to win the stage. The gap, though, looking back down the road, Phil, is around about 15 to 20 seconds.
That is quite a gap, and Pierre Roland will be kicking himself here, but he couldn't go with the moves. They're sending, I think it probably is 20 seconds at the moment. That's the referee's car gone forward. So the gap he waits for is 20 seconds. Kirienka now, he'll have to work with Paulinho just until they break the spirit of those three riders behind, and they'll race each other for the win today. What a huge opportunity for both of them, Paul.
Well, actually, again, it's very difficult to pick a winner from these two, Phil, because both of them, their pedigree is actually in time trialing. Neither of them has won a race for the last 2 years. The last race that was won by Sergio Paulinho was the Portuguese National Championships back in 2008.
And this is Kirienka's first Tour de France, so what a debut that would be for a stage win to go down on his records. He's been very strong. He's been looking for the move all day, Kirienka. You could see he's watched everybody that's come to the front very carefully. He hasn't missed out. He's had the strength to go with the split. And they've got to keep the pressure on now because they know those three will be back at them, especially Mario Ertz.
Well, Kirienka, just looking back through his records, I think is probably going to have the advantage when it comes down to the sprint, because Phil, back in 2008, he was the world points champion, and to win the world points champion on the track, you have to punch a very good sprint. Whereas on the other hand, I think Sergio Paulinho is a very solid rider, but in the individual time trial, and may not have the burst. So it's all going to come down to a question of tactics.
I think as Team Sky are finding out, the conversion from being top track cyclists to top roadmen is a world apart right now. So we'll see how it affects Kirienka. Just looking here at the operating machinery on Sergio Paulinho.
These two guys have got the gap now, Phil, because it's stretched out to 32 seconds over the three chasers, Ertz, Devenants and Roland. So it's not going to be it's not going to be the end of the day that the French wanted, with the red, white and blue getting themselves a victory for the 14th time since the Tour de France was created.
So the two working together. 7.2 miles to go, 11.5 kilometers to go. The flag of Belgium, Flanders, flying as they go underneath. These two riders, I think, are going to make it. It's Portugal versus Belarus now. These two riders, I don't think, are going to be caught. It's pushing towards 1 minute for the chasers. The peloton are still in bed, and it's over 12 minutes for them as they go under 15 kilometers to go. They haven't even started racing for the green jersey points yet, and they're looking for the 7th place now. The peloton, the breakaway is 2 leaders, 3 chasers, and Maxime Bouet out on his own behind.
Yes, but it's going to be an important 7th place for the main field. It's not as if they will ignore that, because there are still points available for the green jersey points classification. Look how melted the surface of the road here is. These guys have got to pay attention now, because just looking at that road surface just makes me remember what happened to Rushiba Belocchi when they were chasing Alexander Vinokourov. Lance Armstrong was with him going down a very nasty descent just like this one, when all of a sudden his wheel popped off and he went crushing down to the ground in a very, very dramatic crash.
So 8 kilometers to go to the finish now as we race down towards the final hairpin bends that bring them into gap. Just looking here, I think that the best descender here is Sergio Paulinho. He's riding very strongly on the way down.
Yeah, but this is not that much of a technical descent, really. It's not like the descent we just came down a few moments ago from the summit of the Col du Tourmalet. Around that corner, he's used all of the road possible, and you can see that Kirienka is just pulling himself back slowly. They've both recovered well after their long day in the saddle. They're both now starting to get into their mind the mentality of the winner. How do I beat this guy? Is it going to be pure strength, or am I going to outwit him inside the last 300 or 400 yards? And both of them are still prepared to keep sharing the pacemaking. Nobody yet has decided to start the silly tactical maneuvers of trying to miss turns.
Well, they're pushing out to nearly 13 minutes behind the peloton on these two leaders now, and these two leaders are getting 56 seconds over the three chasers behind them. They're racing for first place now.
So here we go. We're not too far away now from the very nasty corner that we came down a couple of years ago, and it's exactly the same corner that Lance Armstrong and Yoshiba Bolocki actually crashed in. So swinging around, just keeping themselves. That's the finish line down in the bottom below, and that is the finish line of Gap. And once they get down into Gap, it starts to flatten out, but only for a couple of kilometers or so. So 5 kilometers to go around this corner. Kirienka keeping the pressure up nice and hard for him at the front. Now it's a question of surviving the gap that they've got now over the chasers. It's starting to stretch all of the time. It's just tickling the 1 minute mark. Oh, that's a very nasty little bend. Around the corner, they took the lines badly there.
So as we continue on the descent towards the last 4 kilometers, where it was the Bolocki incident with Lance Armstrong in 2003. These boys are now dropping back from the chase. They've gone back to 61 seconds. Hey, that was Lance's winning margin, the Tour de France in 2003, 61 seconds.
It was
this is Bouet on his own.
Yeah, Bouet, he's holding on to 6th place, and this is Nicholas Roach. We must have gone somewhere else in the race.
Well, wherever Nicholas is, has he got away from the front of the bunch? Because it's Christophe Lemavelle, 81.
It's Nicholas Roach.
Is it?
Yep, and I don't know where he is or what he's doing. He may well have tried to get out of the main field on his own to try and get himself a few extra points, and nobody's reacted at all there. So Nicholas Roach, who lost himself a little bit of time on a couple of the mountain stages, is looking to grab himself a few seconds here.
Well, he's 17th overall in the race here, and a few seconds would move him up one lace. There is the bend where it all happened, traced by that yellow board there, but safe today. It was where Lance went charging down the grass bank there back in 2003. Yoshiba Bolocki was left lying in the road with a broken leg. His tyre came off, he slipped in the met tar, and I think it's just as hot today, to be quite honest, Paul.
It certainly is just as hot. These guys are now safely off the slopes of this final descent of the day, and they're now onto the flatter part of the course. They are now lining up for the victory in the city of Gap. 3.3 kilometers to go, and still they continue to share the pacemaking. I really still, for the moment, can't pick a winner between these two, but I have to say, I think I would give advantage to Kirienka because of his track sprinting ability.
It's who is the craftiest in the run-in here, because it is not technical as we approach the finish. And I think that was probably 4 kilometers to go, but I missed the banner there as it passed underneath us. The two leaders continue to swap their pacemaking here. There's still no indication as to who will make it. It's a big chance for both of them. None of them have been remotely winners of a stage of the Tour de France in the past. And in the case of Kirienka, it's his first Tour de France. Sergio Paulinho, it's his 3rd trip around.
Well, now's the time when they can start to think about tactically how to outwit each other, because they've got a good buffer, a minute's advantage with 2.5 kilometers to go. Sergio Paulinho is getting a little bit of information coming in there from Johan Brunel, the master tactician. But what can he do to outwit this man who's probably got the fastest finish?
Kirienka certainly looks as though he's poising himself for a quick sprint to the line here. There's also a big battle going on for the team lead in the Tour de France. There is only a hatful of seconds separating Radio Shack and Case de Pan. Case de Pan have the advantage, so they've got to finish together to keep that race alive. 2 kilometers for the leaders. These three are racing for 3rd.
They're racing for 3rd position. Mario Ertz on the far side. He's the man who started it all. Dries Devenens in the blue and white jersey there. He thought he was going to finish it off, but all of a sudden it all came back together. And then these two riders have stolen a margin over the rest of them. But it's still anybody's race to win here for these two riders. Kirienka still looking very good. He's the rider from Case d'Epargne, a team which has been very aggressive, I'd have to say, Phil, over the last few stages.
They're looking for the kite in the road now, that bridge assembly that weighs the red triangle 1 kilometer from the finish. Paulinho's got himself in the right position here, like the Olympic Games back in Athens when he was behind Paolo Bettini.
Well, Now what he's got to think about, he's got to cast his mind back to that. Bettini was a very fast finisher. Bettini could win bunch sprints in races like the Giro d'Italia, and he knows exactly what situation he's in here. He will have to be very clever and very crafty, and he may well delay the sprint for a moment and just try and sprint from 250, 300 meters to go, or he may well try and force the Belarusian rider to go to the front.
1 kilometre from the finish of today's stage of the Tour de France. 2 riders in the peloton, 12 minutes behind today. Neither of these riders have been remotely near winning a stage of the Tour. For one of them, it'll be a huge celebration on Bastille Day.
No, it is now. You can see Sergio Paulinho's got himself into an ideal position. He's pushing the Belarusian rider into first, looking over his shoulder. A last little check to make sure nobody comes up at the last moment, but they're not going to, because the gap is well over the 1 minute mark. Getting himself ready, pulling up that zip so he's got every bit of aerodynamic advantage that he might possibly require.
Well, this is a confident piece of riding, or a stupid one, by Kirienko, because he's going to have to lead this one out. Sergio Paulinho will not come out of that slipstream now. Kirienko riding on the right, so he knows he's forcing Paulinho to move on his left. He's watching for him. He looks as though he's riding on a track right now. He's waiting for the reaction, and he's going to have to beat him by half a second if he's going to stay in front of him. When is Paulinho going to move? He's stalking him up the home straight. Here he goes now, he breaks, and it was a little bit late there by Kirienko. He's going to have a very big kick now, because I think Paulinho has read that, and Kirienko waited that half second too long, and he's got him beat. Sergio Paulinho, I better keep digging. Oh my goodness me, he got it in the end, but in the end it wasn't by very much.
Well, that was a big lunge for the line. That was the kind of lunge that you learn when you're racing on the track. He waited a long time before coming up. This was the final burst for the line, but I think at this point Paulinho knew that he'd got it. Look at that lunge. That's the lunge of a track sprinter there, but Paulinho looked down. He knew he'd got it at that point, so Sergio Paulinho is going to be the winner of the stage, and now it's a question of who's going to run out in third place. And I have to say again, it's not going to be for the French this afternoon on Bastille Day.
Well, what a happy team Radio Shack will be now in their first Tour de France, and they've got their stage win from a most unlikely source in Sergio Paulinho. Now, it's a 3-man sprint. It's for second place now.
This is for pride, really, for Mario Hertz. He's been a professional since 1996, but it's also pride for France. In second position there is Pierre Roland of B-Box Bouygues Telecom. He had dreamed all throughout this stage in this race-long breakaway of getting himself a victory for France, but are the Belgians going to take him to the cleaners?
So the man that started my favourite 10 tours for this rider here, and I thought Mario Hertz might have done it. He started the move, and there's the break from the back by Devenans. Devenans again, a rookie of the Tour de France, as he kicks away quickly onto his wheel is Pierre Roland. Roland would like at least third. He's going to have to give it special. Dries Devenans is too good. Pierre Roland is fourth, and Mario Hertz is fifth. There'll be a little while before we see Maxime Bouet.
Well, we'll probably have to wait a couple of minutes before Maxime Bouet comes. Well, there's the photo finish, Phil. And as you can see, as we pull the line up there, we're looking at around about a half a wheel advantage for the Olympic silver medalist from Athens, Sergio Paulinho. He got the jump, he got the gap at just the right time. And as you can see, the man in second position had a hard time pulling himself back up to the slipstream. He needed to be on the wheel immediately. But then this was a well-judged sprint. Paulinho looks across, but he knows he's got it. The lunge for the line just came that little bit too late for the man who's got the great track finish.
Well, he's going to be bitterly disappointed. I think he made a mess of that, frankly, because he wasn't even paying attention when Paulinho made the kick. You get a split second to react, and if you don't react in that split second to a jump from the back, you don't win. It's as simple as that. And Paulinho did well to do that, because he's not renowned as a sprinter. He hasn't won a race since June 2008, when he won his national time trial championship. He hasn't won a race which is mass start since September 2006, when it was a stage of the Vuelta. Now let's have a look back at the peloton running here. We are hearing on race radio that Remy Poriol has got clear, and there is somebody up the road there. Well, as he heads onto the banner there, which will be what, about 5 kilometers out or more.
Well, Nicolas Roche is still off the front end of the main field as well, and this is Maxime Bouet coming up for sixth.
So Maxime Bouet coming into the finish here. He's held them all off. 3 minutes has gone by. It's been an uncomfortable last few kilometres, but he made it. Well done. He comes home in 6th place today.
Well, he suffered a lot, this young man, but at least he'll be able to say he's had a top 10 finish on a stage of the Tour de France. He was hoping to stay in contact all the way on the run in towards the finish line. The main field, and I'm still getting information that Nicholas Roach is off the front end of the main field, but it's now, Phil, starting to come under the control of the sprinters, because even though we're only looking at 7th place, it's extremely important for the men who are trying to win the green jersey classification.
This is Remy Poriol, the Frenchman who slipped away on the descent. So at the moment he is riding for the 7th place on the race. And the battle behind is still being lined up for Pataki or Thor Hushoff, the battle for the green jersey, or maybe even Robbie McEwen of Australia. We are now approaching 2 kilometres to go for Remy Poriol.
Well, Remy Poriol just trying to get himself a little bit of glory for France this afternoon. It doesn't really do very much to the overall classification, but it's a question of glory on Bastille Day, the 14th of July, French national holiday. If you can get a place in the top 10 on a stage like this, that's one to put in the record books for yourself.
Oh, it's very, very hard to do. Even so, he's 42nd in the Tour de France in 2009, Poriol. But he's just trying to stay away from the rest. They're trying to line it up now. The sprinters are trying to organise it. They haven't really had chance to pull the teams into any form of organisation because of the narrow descent down into these last 3 kilometres.
You can now see the teams of the sprinters starting to take control at the front end of the main field. I can see Lampre are very much in control at the front of the pack there. For Alessandro Pataki, the kind of sprint that he likes, Phil, he likes the same kind of sprint as Mark Cavendish. He likes the team to line it up into a big long line and to have them. In fact, Nicholas Roach has survived.
Stayed away, so we're racing for even further. This is 7th place for Roach coming in.
Well, this is a good move by Roach. You know, he sees every opportunity, just like his dad. He looked for the opportunity to try and pull himself back a few seconds. 15 seconds here, 20 seconds there. That can be the difference between finishing inside of the top 10 or not.
Well, if he gets 26 seconds on the peloton, he will go above Bradley Wiggins, who sits 16th overall in the Tour de France at the moment. And he might have got more than just on half a minute's lead over the peloton. Big effort by Nicholas Roach, who is really developing into being a very, very good bike rider. And it's an empty straight down there. Well, that was a crafty little move. He's pinched a lot of seconds, and he will climb over Bradley Wiggins tonight.
Well, he's a man who came to the Tour de France with high hopes of finishing himself high up in the top 10 overall. He lost a few minutes in the mountains because he had a rather bad day. First of all, up to the Station de Rousse, and then a very bad day over the Col de la Madeleine. But he's a young rider, still learning, still developing, and it cracks me up sometimes, Phil, that they call him the Franco-Irishman.
Indeed, indeed, because with Nicolas or Nicolas, but the same can apply to Stephen. He's also speaks both languages fluently. And Poriol is coming over, and in fact, the arrival of Roach, he's now gone above Wiggins and Carlos Sastre, the 2008 winner, and he's likely to reach Michael Rogers of Australia, so he could be up to 14th in the Tour de France tonight, because the clock has already moved on.
Yeah, well, that's what he's looking for. He's looking to finish as highly up as he can in the overall standings. The main field now coming charging into the line, and it's still Lampre leading it out, but Thor Hushoff is locked onto the wheel of Alessandro Pataki, and Robbie McEwen is there too.
But it's only for 9th place, but watch out, Cavendish is also there. There goes Pataki. Now, Hushoff knows he's got to hold Pataki here. He doesn't want to lose too many places. Cavendish is coming through the middle. That's a formality for Cavendish. Pataki gets 1 point advantage over Hushoff. So he's had a good day, but it still will be Thor Hushoff in green tonight.
But it's all in that competition, Phil. It's all about chipping away every day. Even if you're sprinting for 7th or 10th or 15th, you've got to go, because every little point at the end of the day, at the end of 3 weeks, can be the difference between winning the green jersey points classification or losing it.
Well, the peloton lost 14 minutes today, but they're not worried about that. Well, just looking at the peloton, there is the maillot jaune of Andy Schleck chatting with his greatest rival when the mountains come back in Alberto Contador. Friends for the moment. This isn't the stage for them. There's no way they can gain time on a flat road. They've got to wait for the time trials or the mountains, or maybe even tomorrow on the climb up to the finish in Mende. But for the moment, they're just talking sweet nothings, I would think, not trying to give away anything about their form.
No, that's the important thing. They're just talking about What kind of tyres are you going to ride tomorrow? What tyre pressures are you using? What's going on? Talking maybe about the World Cup final and how great Spain was to get themselves that victory ahead of Holland. And Fabian Cancellara is thinking, how can I make this main field crack when we get into the crosswinds and give Andy Schleck a few more seconds advantage over Alberto Contador?
Just chatting there with Juan Antonio Fletcher, the new signing on Team Sky. And he won the first race for them right out at the beginning of the season, the semi-classic race in Belgium. That was a great start for the team. We've got to be honest, they've struggled in this year's Tour de France, but they're hoping today they can persuade Edvald Boysenhagen to win the stage. And he is sprinting well. He's had 2 third places. They need a little bit of a confidence booster, I think, just at the moment.
Well, they have invested a bit of time in today's stage, Phil, because they actually sent somebody up early in the morning with a camera fitted to his helmet, and he rode the last 5 kilometers of the route, because they don't trust exactly what is appearing in the race handbooks, and they want to have a visual idea of what the final 5 kilometers look like. And that's what they did, and they showed it to the guys in the team bus just before the start of the day, just to try and get Edvald Boysenhagen just a little bit more motivated.
Well, it's a very, very good idea. Well, all the planes and gliders grounded while the Tour helicopters fly through the region by the look of it, as we continue to cross over the tournesols now. The sunflowers all looking away from us at the sun.
Yeah, this is also a very famous part of the world for gliding. People travel from all over Europe to do that part of that sport. So the vines on the right-hand side and on the left as these riders now start to move away from the heart of the Drôme and down towards the outskirts of the Provence. Provence are well known for its rosé wine, a wine that now is becoming extremely popular in Europe throughout the summer months. And in fact, some of the big wine growing areas such as Bordeaux and Bourgogne have started to produce their own versions of the rosé wine. I'm just having a look at the back here. This is Mario Ertz, who was in the breakaway yesterday, number 102. The rider with the white jersey there with the bands of Germany around it is the national champion of Germany, Christian Knies. This is the national champion of Switzerland, number 84, and that's Martin Elmiger, former winner of the Tour Down Under in Australia. And there's the Manx Missile, as they call him, number 111, Mark Cavendish. Just having a little chat with Lance Armstrong there, but they won't be chatting later on, because once we get down to the last 30 kilometers or so, he will put on his game face and think about trying to get himself victory number 3 in this year's event.
Face of Levi Leipheimer there, Radio Shack. All the pressure of the day on his shoulders now. Levi lives in Santa Rosa in California, so at least he'll feel happy in this sort of weather today. Crashed out last year with a broken ribs. He was coming into Colmar, wasn't he, Paul, when he crashed?
Yes, it was. In fact, he had a crash in the first week of the race, and he almost had to pull out there because he was fairly injured in his wrist for a couple of days. This is Carlos Sastre. He won the Tour de France in 2008 with a magnificent attack on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez, but this year, I have to say, Phil, he's had a quiet year, but he did come into this Tour de France with questionable form, having had some very serious back problems.
Well, Carlos Sastre enjoyed his first day in the mountains, which went up to the Station des Russes, but he didn't enjoy his second day, which went up to Morzine-Avoriaz, and he started to slip back out of contention. I don't think he's even got a chance of a third place finish right now. I think he's lost a little bit too much time. But his Cervelo team, of course, do have the green jersey on it with Thor Hushovd. That's the second most important competition in the Tour de France. Came into the race back in 1953. Give the sprinters something to shoot at when they couldn't climb those big mountains.
Yeah, because for the sprinters, when they get into the mountains, their days are really just a question of survival. It is so easy when you're a sprinter to get eliminated from the bike race, and that's one of the reasons why Mario Cipollini had a very hard time getting himself up to Paris, because he just had this very difficult allergy to the high mountain passes. The reason for that is sprinters and climbers are two different kinds of physiological animals, because the climbers are a much leaner, slimmer bike rider, and they weigh in very often inside of 50 kilos, where the majority of sprinters weigh in at between 70 to 80 kilos. And that difference is related to an awful lot of wattage that you need to actually grab up the mountain passes. And I was reading the other day that when you start to climb, for every extra kilo that you're carrying, you require an extra 5 watts to drag your body up there. 56 kilometers to go now, and there's a study into the face of the young Luxembourger Andy Schleck. His brother crashed out of the race over the very difficult cobblestone stage of stage 3 into the Arenberg forest and broke his collarbone into 3 pieces. Had to have surgery. He's expected to start riding back again in about a week to 10 days time. We're looking here into the face of Lance Armstrong, riding for Team Radio Shack. Probably a little bit more relaxed now because Radio Shack at least got themselves a stage victory out of the Tour de France with a very good tactical win by Sergio Paulinho yesterday, the rider who was second in the Olympic Games back in Athens. Finished just behind Paolo Bettini. Here's the second and final sprint point of the day in about 1,000 meters.
This is the second and last sprint of the day. It will take us into the last 54 kilometers of the day, Paul, at Mirabel.
Yeah, Mirabel et Blacon. And for these 3 riders, it's just a question of pride who gets across the line in first place. It takes a little bit of pressure, though, off the shoulders of the green jersey of Thor Hushovd. He doesn't have to come out and sprint against Pataki and Cavendish or even Robbie McEwen. And looking on the far side there, that's Denny Menchov. He still has been very quiet in this Tour de France. He's not really done anything at all, and yet he sits there, Phil, in 4th place overall, looking for 2 minutes and 58 seconds. And I don't think he's done a thing wrong, and he's got a great teammate alongside him as well, Robert Hessink, who is second in the Best Young Rider competition, but also is in 7th place overall.
Yes, I'd be very worried about Denny Menchov. He really seems to have hit his form at exactly the right time. And he's a man that has won before the Tour of Italy. He won it in 2009. He won 2 stages then. He won after the disqualification of Roberto Heras, the Tour of Spain in 2005. And then he won it for real in 2007 as well. So he's a big Grand Tour winner. We'll see. He's certainly a man that will take his opportunities. You may recall last year, he spent about as much time on the ground as he did on his bike. He kept on crashing.
Yeah, he crashed in the team time trial. He crashed in the individual time trial. He certainly did not have his favorite Tour. This time, he's looking comfortable there. Going through, it's Stéphane Ogier who gets himself maximum points at that point, just ahead of Geslin, and then Benitez in 3rd place, getting 2 points and a couple of €100 too.
That's enough for a bottle of champagne, but not from this region, because this is a white wine growing region at the moment. Well, the peloton now are being stretched out by the teams of the sprinters, so it looks as though they're going hunting again. They're into a headwind just now, and that will not favor a good chase because they know it's hurting the leaders riding into this headwind, so they're letting them just tire a little bit longer before they go out and bring them back. They will turn for this tailwind finish today, and it is going to give us a very rapid approach to the line. I'm sure the riders have worked it out because they send people to the finishing line to find out about conditions, because they would have needed to have fitted a much higher gear on the bikes today.
Yeah, but as I said, Phil, there is a very tricky corner at 1 kilometre to go. It's a traffic circle that the riders come into, and it's a rather strange approach as well because they whip into a right and a left-hand bend almost consecutively. And if you're not in the first 5 to 10 places there, you're going to find yourself possibly coming unstuck, and you'll have to be very attentive. But then after that, once we get into the Avenue de Lyon, which is actually part of the old Route Nationale 7, it's a long straight crack at the finishing line.
Gosh, I hope the helicopter doesn't blow the grapes off the vines here, flying this low as he tracks the riders in the Tour de France. They're only about 800 meters or so, maybe slightly more, behind that leading group right now. So they can go and get them when they want them.
Yeah, they've got this pretty much under control. They actually feel a lot more comfortable having the breakaway group off the front end of the main field, because it actually calms the ardor of the attackers in the main field, because people don't want to get into a situation where they want to try and jump across the gap. They want to start from afresh. They want to make sure that there's nobody leading the race before the attacks start.
Well, they're using the Tour first timer Gregor Bolle on the front here for Lampre. Sipsov in 2nd place, Dave Zabriskie in 3rd. And no signs of deciding yet to bring back that breakaway of 3.
Well, the front end of the main field still pretty much controlled by the teams of the sprinters, and they are trying to reel in a 3-man leading group which escaped exactly as the race started this morning. And the 3 men in the group are Jose Benitez of Futon Cerveto, Stéphane Ogier of Team Cofidis, and a little bit of a precarious section of the course here. And the other rider in that leading group is, of course, Anthony Geslin of France and Française des Jeux. But it just goes to give you an indication there, Phil, of just how difficult the race route can be sometimes. And if you need a second-hand car, you can drop down here, because this, I think, is the second-hand car graveyard.
Well, I'd choose the one in the middle. That would cause a problem, wouldn't it? You have to move all those other cars to get mine out.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
No, I haven't. Well, I guess it's a breaker's yard. I don't know.
Well, I would suggest it is. Well, but if we tell people it is, they'll believe us.
Indeed. And there's the long straight road. There is the lead. There are the leaders at the end of the road, so the peloton can see them. They can see them from not the first time on these roads today. As we go inside 50 kilometers from the finish, the town of Crest, which is, I think, the town where the rivers start to come through from the mountains as they start to rise and pour into the drop.
Well, yeah, that's the town we went by last night. It's a hilltop town. We actually avoided the centre of town and went round the outskirts. But I wonder if there'll be attack here by Maxime Montfort of Team HTC Columbia, because the town of Crest was originally taken by Simon de Montfort in 1217, so maybe that would be a good move for the Belgian rider to go out on the attack.
Some family tree that one is, I must say. 128. Well, we didn't see the town, but there we can see the chalk pot on the road there. That's when people can send stuff in and have their slogans printed on the road. That's taken off next day by the organisers of the chalk pot. And there's the peloton speeding into Crest. You're right, we went straight on and around, but there you can see Crest itself, and that's the famous Crest Tower. Now, it was
to the 12th century.
Extraordinary rock face that we get the opportunity.
Towers. Just looking down here at the Crest Tower on the far side, there was a massive big flag there yesterday to celebrate Bastille Day, of course. And this tower that we're looking at here was built originally way back in the 13th century. As we go around the front here, we might just get a chance to see it. It really did look magnificent last night as the sun was starting to go down over the valley of the Drôme. Bisous la Lausière, and that's kisses to la Lausière, and that's not sure what la Lausière is. Anyway, good guess. And this is all part of the heritage that France has. It really is an incredible place, the country that we go through every year when the Tour de France races for almost 4,000 kilometers from the Alps to the Pyrenees and right across the middle of the country, and then down towards the end. It should be rather interesting as well, because on the penultimate day we have an individual time trial right through Chateau Margaux.
This may be the area, Paul, where the wind will start to swing a little bit now, as we're getting more or less level with Valence, and then we go past it and come back down to it. The gap is reflecting that. A minute and 18, minute and 16. It's dropping all the time now.
Yeah, I think we'll start to see a general acceleration, especially if we do get that little bit of a crosswind starting to appear once we've left the valley roads behind us. And there will be some nervous riders in the main field, especially the climbers, especially guys like Andy Schleck and Alberto Contador. As you can see, there's a little bit of discussion going on here. And in fact, the leading trio here, Phil, have also started to raise their game.
Yes, well, they will do here in Crest, because there should be a big support for the riders here. If you're not actually going to visit the town, you can bypass it just by nipping around the outside and turning right at the traffic lights and never coming in. But not the Tour de France. They take it into the heart of these towns and villages to show the people these great cyclists. And currently in here, of course, not just the leader of the Tour, but the world champion as well, Cadel Evans. And I was wondering how narrow it was. We went round it yesterday, so we didn't actually see the centre itself. Dave Zabriskie on the front. He's the pacemaker, the token pacemaker from Garmin Transitions, as Bolle is the same for Lampre.
Well, just checking on the computer again, the Garmin Transitions have done about 20% of the work on the front end of the main field over the last 10 minutes or so, but still about 50% of the pacemaking is being done by HTC Columbia, and that's because they really believe that their man from the Isle of Man, Mark Cavendish, can come up with win number 3 here this afternoon. And if he does get that third victory, that will take his total tally of victories at the Tour de France to 13 stage wins, and he'll go ahead of Robbie McEwen, the Australian, and he'll also go ahead of his own coach, Eric Zabel.
As the helicopter pops over the top of the tower here in Crest, picks up the 3 leaders. The gap is now coming down. It's a minute and 12, and it's still descending quite quickly now. hovering about a minute 8, minute 9 in fact.
Well, they will start to pick up the pace now as we start to go away from Crest and we go out into the valley of the Rhône, and that's where the race is going to finish. The Rhône is not too far away from here in Valence, or the town where we are here, in fact, which is the town of Bourg-lès-Valence, which is actually almost a little suburb on the outskirts of Valence, a small little satellite town. And it's right on the motorway du Soleil, the motorway that comes from Lyon right the way down to Orange, Aix-en-Provence and on to Marseille. 1 minute and 10 seconds is the gap, and that's what these three leaders have just seen, and they will now be wondering how long it's going to take, because it's almost certain that they will get pulled back into the main field. They're probably starting to wonder how long or how much longer will we remain in the lead of this stage of the Tour de France. Stage 11 from Sisteron to Bourg-lès-Valence, ride of just about 179 kilometers. So we're getting away from the valley now, Phil, and it's going to open up into the larger valley, or the valley of the Rhône, as we leave the Drôme Valley behind us. And this is where we're most likely to start to pick up some slightly interesting crosswinds. That's the roundabout we took last night at around about 9:30, and this now is going to start to go away from the forested protected area, away from the valley areas, and this is where we'll start to pick up the very nasty little crosswinds.
This is the concentration on Stéphane Ogier here, the coffiest man on the squad. 8 Tours de France for him.
Well, he's been in this situation before, a very experienced rider, but both the Frenchmen are fairly experienced. They've been around for quite some time, but they should realize that it's very difficult to try and outfox the teams of the sprinters. And there you can see this ice bag that Dave Zabriskie has got. Everybody is trying whatever they can do today, Phil, to try and keep themselves just a little bit cooler on what has been a very hot Tour de France.
Just looking at Zabriskie here and Bolle, they've been real workhorses today, I have to say, as they continue to just hold this gap just on 1 minute. They're trying not to catch them. They're trying to stay in touch with them and not catch them. They know the minute they catch them, there will be counter-attacks coming all of the time from somebody else in the peloton, because we talk of just about 3 or 4 sprinters to win the stage. But there are 179 riders in this race, and there's a lot of riders trying to outwit those sprinters, and if they do catch those 3 riders, then they will start to attack and see if anything can work.
Yeah, when we talk about the sprinters, there are a number of sprinters in the Tour this year. We've obviously talked a lot about Cavendish, Farrar, Pataki, but you've got to also throw in names like Edvard Bosenhagen. He's a young guy, a rider who's developing on Team Sky, and he's looking to try and get himself the victory this afternoon. The man who's been the most consistent for sprinters since the start is obviously Thor Hushovd, but you've got to look to some of the other teams. Sebastian Turgot of France. France has not had a great sprinter over the last couple of years, but Turco, funnily enough, has finished 6th on a number of occasions, and Philly's 6th in the points classification too.
He's a fast.
No, he certainly is, and don't discount, of course, Oscar Freire. I've seen Freire, the Spanish rider who's been 3 times champion of the world, riding at the front end of the main field on a number of occasions. And if you want to throw another one into the mix, why not the Spanish sprinter on Case d'Espagne, Jose Rojas? He's also proved to be rather rapid. So there are a lot of teams who have an interest in pulling this 3-man breakaway back together. Once we start to get into the next few days, it's going to be difficult for the sprinters, because they will go back onto the defensive, just trying to survive these stages and get themselves through these very difficult flatlands. So 44 kilometers to go, 1 minute and 5 seconds. It's hovered at this amount for the majority of the stage this afternoon, and that's really because the teams of the sprinters have kept a very strong rein on this leading group of 3. They've never given them very much of an advantage at all. The maximum advantage they got was 4 minutes and 15 seconds over the front end of the main field.
Well, as the flags continue to wave of all the nations, the American flag is on camera at the moment, Paul. The gap is 1 minute, and they're happy.
They've got it pretty much locked in, and these guys currently know exactly what they have to do. And it's only really one rider at a time from each team who sets the pacemaking for about a kilometre or so. And what that's doing is just preventing that gap from going up, but it's also not bringing it down. And they won't want to bring it down till around about 20 kilometres to go. A lot of white jerseys at the back on the right-hand side. That's Cervelo test team. Now, they're the teammates of Thor Hushovd, and they won't come to the front end of the bunch, I don't think, Phil, until around about 20 kilometres to go. And then they will start to try and lead out Hushovd to get himself a stage victory.
That's waving off the sun there with the parasol. It's a very, very hot day, even though it's getting into the late afternoon, it remains extremely hot today. 1 minute the gap. Just come inside for the first time. It's now clicked into, it's clicked back to a minute now.
Well, it's hovering, Phil. Call it hovering. That's around the 1 minute mark as we start to go through these very long avenues of plantains. These plane trees here are all over France, and they've got the reason is it makes it nice and shaded for the riders to come down these avenues.
So as we look at the three riders in the front here at the moment, notably, none are from Garmin Transitions, but I can tell you now, joining me in the commentary box, and Paul, is the manager of the Garmin Transition team, Jonathan Vortis. And tell me, Jonathan, is it going to be a good day for Tyler Farrett? They've got to bring these three back first.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, obviously, our team is a bit, weakened by various broken bones. We've actually had four guys break bones, and two of them have had to drop out of the race, and two of them are continuing on in there. But it's a good finish for him. He's feeling a lot better. Yesterday, he said, was the first day that his wrist was 100% on the bike. So, I mean, it's been a hard tour for our race, but I think today, at least Tyler is back on his game.
What about David Miller? He's had an horrendous trip through the Alps.
Yeah, David broke a couple ribs, and basically during the flat stages it was okay. They were staying stable. Once he got into the mountains and was really putting torque onto the pedals, it just sort of destabilized, and he started putting too much pressure on one leg and compared to the other, and it just killed him.
Jonathan, yesterday I noticed, the other sprinters came out to play. Cavendish, Pataki, Thor Hushovd, obviously thinking about the green jersey. Tyler didn't really go out for that sprint. Is there a reason for that? Is he trying to save something for today's stage?
Yeah, I mean, we're just 100% for stage wins at this point in time. After the first few sort of horrific days for our team, we backed off our ambitions for the green jersey, maybe 2011, but we're certainly focused on the stage win today.
Well, you've had a great lead out in the first couple of days of the tour because you had those great sprinters, Julian Dean, Robbie Hunter, looking after Tyler Farrett. Is it going to be a different kind of sprint now for Tyler? Is he going to have to try and come off the wheel of Mark Cavendish? That's a difficult thing to do. We all know, I think we all know, to beat Cavendish, you've got to go first.
Well, that's, today he's really just going to be Tyler and then Julian Dean, and Martin Moscont has actually taken up a good role in the lead-out train as well. So, but it'll be those two, and then if David Miller can help him, he will. But we certainly don't have the dominant train that we had at the Giro, or that we had the first few days of this race. So sometimes it's just a little bit of bad luck. But Tyler certainly won a lot of races without really much lead-out help at all. If you look at Hamburg last year, great classic, he won that just by himself.
But the big question, can he beat Mark Cavendish? Can anybody beat Mark Cavendish?
Well, I think Tyler has beaten Mark Cavendish, and he's beaten Mark Cavendish on a finish just like this. So he can do it. He hasn't done it in the Tour de France yet. Will he do it today? I don't know. I mean, Mark's certainly looking pretty good, and Tyler's obviously had his problems. I mean, what we were hoping for is in some of the more selective stages that Tyler would make the group and Mark wouldn't, and that might have played out and it might not have, but we'll never really know at this point in time because we're into the Tour de France pretty far, and Mark's going pretty good.
Well, Tyler's turning out to be really a little bit of a sprinter along the lines of Oscar Freire, because this year he's had a great campaign in some of the one-day races too, and he's turning into a much more mature rider. It seems to me that that's happened in the last 2 seasons, and he's gained an awful lot of confidence.
Well, with time, Tyler's going to be a guy that can race for the win at races like Tour Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. He is not just a sprinter by any means. In the Tour de France, he comes with his hat on as purely a sprinter for us, but he's certainly a guy. I mean, even if you look at World Championships for the next 2 years in Melbourne and then in Denmark in 2011, if the U.S. can field a good team, Tyler can win.
All right, well, Jonathan, thanks awfully for popping into the commentary box. and keep enjoying the Tour de France. I hope your luck swings. We have spoken to Christian van der Velde earlier today. He seems in good spirits. He could be the next world champion, maybe.
Well, thanks, and you know, thanks for all the fans out there for having you know, cheering for us to keep us hanging into the race. So.
Terrific.
Thanks for having
Jonathan
me.
Waters there, the manager of the Garmin Transitions team, and still very much a part of this year's Tour de France, despite the bad luck which has followed the team around the route since we started in Rotterdam. Well, another beautiful section of the course here, Paul, highlighting the races just below the hills here just now.
Yeah, well, we're out of the valley now, and we're starting to get out into the more open countryside, and the part of the world now is really getting ripped by this wind. Currently, it's a headwind, so that will negate any possibility of breakaways. But once we get to the outskirts of Valence, we circumnavigate the city, and that's where we're going to start to get a crosswind. And this crosswind, Phil, is so strong that I feel it could really split the field. What's happened in the main field now, it's again, it's a little bit like that fishing competition we talk about. What they've done is they've got the fish on the hook here. The fish is these three riders at the front, and they're just allowing the fish to play, just waiting for the time when they want to reel them in finally and put them into the net.
A little bit of stretching here by Benitez.
No, actually, this is at the back end of the main field. This, in fact, is number 211, and he's the leader of Futon Soveto. That's Eros Capecci. And again, a team which is all newcomers to the Tour de France. This is what it's like at the front end of the main field. The lime green jerseys are Liquigas, and that's the team of Ivan Basso, a Roman Kreuziger. And still a lot of work being done and called for by Team Garmin Transition. So having got that little bit of inside information from Jonathan Waters a little while back, maybe they know something that we don't, and maybe their man has got the ability to create the surprise here this afternoon and get himself the victory. So for Garmin Transitions, it's Zabriskie, but he's riding for Farah.
1 minute is the gap now for these riders. A single minute. They've come inside to 50 seconds. They've gone back out to a minute 5. It's now minute 1 as we speak. Dave Zabriskie here, riding tempo, hoping he can guide Tyler Farrar later on. At least somebody can to the line, as the sprinters have put their men at the front. As always, the guys near the top of the overall, Astana with Alberto Contador, they're riding at the front for a different reason. It's the safest place to be.
It is, and Contador will be concerned about the fact that there is a big wind blowing down the valley now, Phil, and this probably is the Mistral, because it's coming straight into the face. It's coming right down the Rhone Valley, and we're basically heading currently in a northerly direction. But once we get to the outskirts of Valence, it's that final 10 kilometers as we circumnavigate the city where all of a sudden we will get a very strong crosswind, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody just doesn't try to put the hammer down and split the field.
Well, it would be nice to see if it happens. The last time we saw it happen was on the road to La Grande Motte last year, early on in the race, when the wind ripped off the Mediterranean and the trees were bending then. Doesn't look too windy out there, but I can tell you at the finishing line the flags are. If you catch sight of the flags, you realize it is a strong wind that's blowing just now.
And that's why I think this main field are just riding along at their tempo. They're leaving that group of 3 riders out there. They pulled them back, in fact, to around about 35 seconds a few moments ago. And then as soon as they felt that they were about to catch them, they allowed them a little bit more freedom.
Let the fish run. 55 seconds just now as they continue to concentrate on the pace-making without catching. That's the attitude today. One of the riders yesterday really did steal a march was Nicholas Roach, who broke away from the front of the peloton as they ran in toward the finish and got enough time to climb up 4 places in the overall classification. So he must have been feeling pretty pleased with himself last night when he went to his bed. This is Benitez in the break, 3 of them at 53 now.
Yeah, very clever move by Nicholas Roach there, probably taken out of his dad's handbook, because Stephen Roach won the Tour de France back in 1987, as well as the Giro d'Italia and the World Championships. And the only other man to do that was the great cyclist Eddy Merckx. Nicholas Roach moved up to 13th placed overall, looking for 6 minutes and 23 seconds. And anything could happen in the Tour, and that's probably why Nicholas saw that as a very good chance to pull himself a little higher up in the standings. He came to the Tour this year with hopes of trying to get himself inside of the top 10. He's trying to emulate and ride in his father's wheel marks, and that's why he is an extremely good tactician. And Stephen Roach takes a very serious interest into his son's cycling career, and he comes down to visit him, and they talk almost every night about tactics and time trialing and the ability that Nicholas has to find the right move on the day. So you can see the long line of riders at the front end. Those are the riders doing the pacemaking. Those are the riders who will disappear from the front end of the pack as we get inside of the top 10 to 15 kilometers and the space starts to pick up.
They're sandwiching through one of the difficult traffic roundabouts here, the peloton being led by the sprinters teams. But this is where they are. In fact, I thought they were going to turn left there, but it's obviously the next roundabout when we do that, Paul.
Yep. At the moment, they're just charging along in a northerly direction. They're picking up a rather strong headwind right into the faces. It's still Grabsch on the front end of the main field. Milram have also sent a couple of riders up here to help in the pacemaking. They're obviously thinking about their sprinter, Gerard Cholik. He reckons that he's recovering very well from the heats and the climbs of this Tour de France, and he'll be looking to try and get himself a stage victory. Why not on the stage to Revel? He would like to get a victory on one of the stages when Mark Cavendish gets left behind, because it's very difficult, I think, for anybody to beat Cavendish in the flat straight sprints. He is really the fastest man around.
It's all about positioning in the final kilometre or so, and then the last 200 metres, the best sprinter will have his lead-out man try and throw him at the finishing line first. It's a very exciting thing to watch as the sprint finish, and it really is great to call on television as well, provided you get the names right, of course. And we're going to see a really true sprint today. It is a dead straight kilometre, more or less.
Yep, well, just looking here as we make our way through this real big agricultural part of France. This race has been not one of the fastest ones here this afternoon, dominated by a climb in the early part of it, and this big headwind that the riders are starting to pick up here, I think, has really deadened the pace in the main field. We look today at the third hour of racing at only 34 kilometers an hour.
Yes, it's not a great speed, that is it.
Well, since from the start of the race, actually, the race was actually run off very quickly indeed. It was just inside of 40 kilometers an hour, which is 25 miles an hour. Stage 10 was a lot slower, and that was really filled pretty much because of the Col de la Fraye, and that was at 34.5 kilometers an hour, and that was a very slow stage on what the French call Bastille Day. Today, a bit higher. The average speed is currently 37 kilometers an hour, which is about 24 miles an hour. So the three leaders here, and I think a lot of that is really because of the fact that this has been a very hot tour, and there's a lot of riders already tired, especially after the big mountain passes. Just a quick glimpse, very quick glimpse, sorry about that. That was the TGV just going by it there, the Train Grand Vitesse, and these are the horses Grand Vitesse as well. Magnificent beasts riding alongside the main field, and obviously not scared at all about these bike riders as they ride along in the farmyards just over to the right-hand side. Turquoise riders there. I never spotted that. The yellow jersey, the polka dot jersey, and where is he? The green jersey. He's gone straight down the road there. He'll be looking to try and take that lead away from Thor Hushovd at the end of the day. Thank you very much for that. Everybody really does get into the spirit of the Tour de France and now, and with that little acceleration there as they rode alongside the horsemen. In fact, I've seen their gap come down to just 26 seconds. It's not going to be very long now before these three riders are back in the main fold. Ogier is the rider on the front. Just a quick reminder of their names because they have dominated this race since the very first kilometre. Stéphane Ogier of Team Cofidis. The Français de Jeu rider is Anthony Geslin, and the Fouton-Soveto rider Jose Benitez. But at 25 seconds, Phil, I think now it's probably over.
Well, it's got to be, hasn't it? 14 tours, by the way, that Geslin and Ogier cumulatively have ridden in their career. And although Ogier has worn the King of the Mountains jersey, neither of those riders, I don't think, have won a stage. But and for Benitez, it's his first time on the Tour de France. Well, we're gazing down here on the outskirts of Valence. This is the town of Chambéry. As the riders will pass through this town. It's just off to the right, actually. We don't actually race through the town. It's off to their right shoulders. But that's where we are now, which means we are swinging in. And as we rejoin the action here, there's an attack coming from Ogier. And he knows the peloton are now biting at the back wheels, about 13-14 seconds the gap, but they're on him straight away.
Well, he hasn't cracked the elastic there at all. They've dragged themselves back up, and what that has done, let's have a look at how he did that. He was in an ideal position, third place, just at the back of the group, and he hit them from behind. But you see the young rider from Fouton-Soveto in the black and brown jersey there. He was extremely attentive, and he pulled himself back to the wheel of the Cofidis rider.
Well, Stéphane Ogier hasn't won a race since September 2008. 2 blank years for Cofidis in 9 and so far in 10. but it's always time to turn it around. He's a very experienced rider, but the attack didn't work. He's now looking across at his French counterpart there, now looking to see where the peloton is. The crowd is having a grandstand view on this roundabout. Is this the one we change direction, I ask?
Well, the gap that they're looking at 15 seconds, Phil, is around about 250 meters. Geslin having a little try now. This is just last-minute flurries of attacks, and it's just going to prolong the length of time before these guys get caught. And now the Futon Cerveto guy's gone to Benitez.
Well, Benitez, a stage winner in the Tour of Mexico a couple of years ago, and it looks as though Geslin has been caught there. He's seen the peloton coming, and now there are two.
Auger just getting himself into the slipstream, and he may well have another little crack himself. But this is just, as I said, Phil, prolonging the agony for these guys, because they will get caught. It's just a question of when.
Well, they're back together. 9 seconds, despite all of these accelerations and the slowdowns. They are now just 9 seconds. If our camera, oh, there we are. I was about to say, if our camera swung round, you would see them. And now we're looking for the lead-out train. It's not this one, as the riders get ready for the finish itself.
Now, that, in fact, is the big fast French chain. It's the TGV, Le Train Grand Vitesse, and it goes at an average of 180 miles an hour, or 300 kilometers an hour. But it did set the world record a couple of years ago when on one section of the rail it actually recorded a speed in excess of 500 kilometers an hour. Everybody getting nervous now on the run into town, and they're starting to sense that the race is about to become extremely serious, especially for the sprinters who want to have their day. We're looking at a 15-second advantage. 250 meters the two riders are in front of the main field, and the main field can see them all of the time. They have them in their sights, they're fixed on them. As they look back over the shoulders there around this little corner there, they can't see them, but any moment now you will see the front end of the main field, and there they are.
Well, it's always a sad sight, isn't it, Paul? But they have been away 26 kilometres off 153 kilometres, these two boys, and there were three, have led the race today, and they might get another kilometre just squeezed out before the peloton snap them up.
Yeah, Auger is an experienced rider, 36 years of age. He's been professional for, this is his 11th year now. He turned professional back in the year 2000. And to my reckoning, Phil, I think he's only ever ridden for one team. And well, no, not. He's ridden for Cofidis for about 7 years. He turned professional actually originally for Team Festina for a couple of seasons.
There's the peloton as they head up to another roundabout. One of these roundabouts, they actually sneak off to our right and their left, and that's when the wind will change direction. 25 kilometers out. We're looking for the banner to say 25 to go. That's when they'll really start to get excited. Beautiful sweeper, that one, as they all come together again.
Yes, I think it's a little, about 5 or 6 kilometers town now. They've circumnavigated the town of Chabois, which we looked at just a little earlier, a town that goes back to the 1300s. And it's once they get into the small town of Alixan, which is at around about 17 kilometers to go to the finish. And that's where they'll start to see the split and the veering off to the left. And that's when they'll pick up the crosswinds.
There's the lovely Chateau de Rosier in that town of Chabois, tucked away in the vineyards.
That was originally built, that chateau there was built in the Middle Ages, and it's surrounded by 3 towers you might just have picked up there. Interesting part of France that we're going through at the moment, because in fact the small town of Chabois at one stage was given to the Principality of Monaco, and there was still a Monegasque house there. The Grimaldi residence is still here, although it was taken back after the revolution in 1789 to the French continent, French country.
And Prince Albert has been on the race, the Prince of Monaco, this year, and we started from Monaco last year. An excellent start it was too. 16 seconds, and there is the banner. 25 kilometers to go for the riders now. They're slowing down because of that split in the road, all safely negotiated. This is the back of the field now. These boys will just want to ride home, keep out of trouble, whereas the sprinters teams have got a big job to do. They've got to organize their sprinter and start to move him to the front.
They've got to try and figure out when they need to start the pacemaking on the run into town here. And again, I hope a lot of them have been to check out the run in towards the town, because although on the race route it shows that it's a completely flat run into the finish, it's actually slightly downhill to the very tricky roundabout at 1 kilometer to go. And if you haven't studied it properly, you could find yourself coming unstuck. Just just hovering there at the front end of the main field with a 16-second advantage, 250 meters. The main field, you can see all the movement in the main field now on the top side there. There's a lot of teams moving up to get themselves organized. The idea there is to get the teams together and wait until the right time to start to organize what's known as the lead-out train. Now, the lead-out train is when we come down into the sprint, and each of the riders in the lead-out train will have a job to do. There'll be probably 2 guys will be there ready to do the pacemaking from 15 to 5 kilometers to go. There'll be a couple more guys to take it from 5 kilometers to go to 1.5 kilometers to go, and then it'll be down to the last 3 riders. The final lead-out man will be right in front of the sprinter, and you'll have somebody lead out from about 1.5k to 500 meters to go. Then sprinter number 2 sprints for the 200-meter to go line, and then you'll see the big sprinter on the team try and catapult himself out of the slipstream of his lead-out man to try and get the victory. That's the theory. What they've got to try and do now is put that into practice. Team HTC Columbia have done it a couple of times so far with their man Mark Cavendish, but so too have Team Lamprey with their man Alessandro Patacchi. The catch is about to happen. They've looked over their shoulders. I think the white flag is about to go up.
It's always a sad side, but look at that. They've been caught 23 kilometers out. They've congratulated each other for a long day in the saddle, and that makes they were in the lead for 161 kilometers.
But the thing is, Phil, if you don't try and get in the breakaway like these guys have done, then you can ride through the whole of the Tour de France completely anonymously.
Yeah.
We've talked about Stéphane Ogier in the past because of his ability to get into the breakaway in races like the Tour de France and to get himself a lead in the King of the Mountains. There are many other riders, the 197 riders started this race, who may never ever see the television cameras, and you might not even know that they ever participated in the Tour. But these 2 guys, we know they did today.
Absolutely right. Nice congratulations. And now they're back in the main pack. And Bert Grabs continues to tap out the rhythm, knowing now there's nobody in front now. So now they've got to start to calculate where their sprint leaders are as we just come outside of Montpellier. 22.3 kilometers to go. For the first time since the first meter of the stage, the peloton is groupé all together. Now it's up to Mark Cavendish and the rest of the sprinters. Well, gone is the headwind now. We've changed direction slightly, and the speed of the peloton has shot up now to 55 kilometers an hour. And it is the team of Andy Schleck who've got to the front here, not to win the race, but to keep Andy Schleck in a very safe position, just near the front.
Well, you know, these flat stages can be just as dangerous sometimes as the mountainous stages. There's Armstrong battling up the outside, and you see the damage that this crosswind has already started to do. The place you have to be now is in that first gaggle of riders just at the end of the long line of riders. If you're in that line of riders down the left-hand side, you are gutter groveling. That's what they call it in the sport of professional cycling.
And there they
this
are.
is a fine example of it.
Tucked into the gutter. The wind is cutting across the course at the moment. It will be called full on tail very shortly, and it could well split here. Now this is where the sprinters have got to be in position near the front with the team around them, because otherwise somebody might open the door in the middle of the pack and they'll be out of the back and they won't make contact for the finish.
It's also where Alberto Contador needs to be very attentive too, because he knows that he has to ride at the front end of this group. He has to make sure he doesn't get involved in a split. Just looking over there, it looks as if the riders from Euskadi are looking after the interests of Sammy Sanchez, and these are the splits at the back.
Somebody has opened the door there, and it looks like Daniel Navarro is in trouble here, the big pacemaker in the mountains for Alberto Contador. But Schleck is right up there, so too is Contador, so too is Samuel Sanchez. They were wise to this one.
There's number 1 just over on the right-hand side there. He's got Alexander Vinokourov in that group with him, but it's decimated his team. And this is what they would expect on the flat stages, because these guys are climbers. They don't know how to ride in the crosswinds. It was all the Spanish riders on Team Astana there. In fact, it was David de la Fuente, Jesus Hernandez and Daniel Navarro all popped out of the back in that crosswind section. And that was all because of this little tactic here done by Team Saxo Bank. There's Alexander Vinokourov. He's dragging his man Alberto Contador up to the front end of the main field. He will protect him from the wind. They realize Alberto Contador got caught out on a stage like this last year, and this team Saxo Bank will do whatever they can to put Alberto Contador under pressure. Look at a face of Jens Voigt there, looking over to see what sort of damage he's doing. Right in the front end of that crosswind is Sylvain Chavanel. This is what's known as an echelon, but I don't think the wind is right in the right direction yet to really split it. There's still a lot of places in the main field where you can shelter. In the middle there, I just noticed Thor Hushovd in the green jersey, the leader of the points classification. Mark Cavendish has got his lead-out line sorted out there over on the right-hand side. Just pulling off there, the riders from Saxo Bank go inside of 15 kilometres to go. There's some serious panic at the back of the pack here now as the group starts to move to the outskirts of Valence and Bourg-en-Valence.
Well, that's where they've made a slight change of direction again, inside 15 kilometres to go. When the cameras get down amongst it, you will see the faces of these riders. They are really suffering now. One of those riders grimacing is none other than the yellow jersey itself. A rush on the right by Rabobank as well now.
Well, they've split off a few riders, but mainly it was only the climbers of Team Astana, Phil. The sprinters we've got to think about this afternoon, of course, Mark Cavendish, Robbie McEwen, 12 wins each. Thor Hushovd, 8-stage wins. In fact, of the 10-stage victories that Norway have scored in the Tour de France, 8 of them belong to Hushovd. Pataki now has 6. Tyler Farrer is still waiting to open up that bank account, and it may well be his day today.
Well, they're all wins in history in the Tour de France for those riders, but just look at his tactics now by Team Saxo Bank. Take a look at the face of the yellow jersey. He's not smiling, he is grimacing, and it's strange to see this, but the sprinters' teams are being dictated to by the race leaders' teams, and all to keep him out of trouble. Hushovd is moving forward in green.
On the right-hand side, the two turquoise jerseys locked together. That's Alexander Vinokourov and Alberto Contador, dragging Contador back up to the front. They know how dangerous these splits can be. It's amazing to think it's a flat stage. You think it's nice and calm, then all of a sudden the wind changes direction and the race gets split to pieces.
Well, for us, it makes an incredible finale to the day now. They will get the cross, and then they will get full-on tail as they go down towards the finish. The heartbeats are shot up now. Looking here at Chris Anker Sorensen on our computer, 165 beats to the minute. Look at his wattage output.
More important, though, Phil, is the wattage. Yeah, 551 watts is what he is pushing at the moment as he pushes himself up to 33.9 miles an hour. That's 52 kilometres an hour. That's why there's so much pain on the faces of these bike riders.
And look at Fabian Cancellara. He can time trial at those sort of speeds by himself, and now he's driving the whole peloton along. Look at the face of Jens Voigt to the right. His mouth is wide open. They're just trying to keep the yellow in a safe position here.
Yeah, but look at Alberto Contador just behind the yellow jersey. He's riding there in the wheel of Andy Schleck. He's got his own teammate Alexander Vinokourov alongside him. He remembered the lesson of last year, Phil, the stage down to the Grand Mot. He got popped out and lost himself 40 seconds. They're not going to catch him out twice.
Well, that was one of the sprinters of Lampre going off, a lead-out man. That was Gavazzi going off there at the moment. Cavendish is well placed. He's got the team organised. Contador is in the right place, but as we pull back all of the time under this pressure now, the peloton is beginning to be split at the back.
Also not caught out, the leader of Omega Pharma Lotto, number 101, Jurgen van den Broek. He's riding at the front end of the main field, but he's a good Belgian bike rider. He knows exactly how to handle this kind of technique.
And they're doing well to keep him right up in the overall classification right now. But again, a little bit of trouble. Looks as though we've got, I think it's Popovic. No, it's yesterday's winner at the back here. Sergio Paolino sitting at the back and not taking any part in the race for the line today. And it's not the sprinters' teams leading the charge into town. It's Schleck's team.
Not for the moment, but any moment now you will see the black, white and yellow group come to the front end of the peloton. That's the damage that can be done in the crosswinds. All of a sudden, once it opens, the gap is gone. And I think we're looking here at King of the Mountain, Jérôme Pinot. He didn't enjoy the crosswinds.
No, but he's still on the podium tonight for his polka dot jersey award. And there's the split now. They're allowing 1 or 2 cars through, but they won't let many in this gap to allow the riders no chance of getting back on.
This is also a very dangerous moment for anybody in this group, because you notice there was only 1 service car behind. That's the neutral service car. Now, if anybody has a mechanical or a flat tire just now, they're going to have a hard time getting themselves back into the field, because there's no convoy of cars behind them, but also there may well not be anybody to hand up a spare wheel as quickly as possible. In a situation like that, if Schleck or Contador has a problem, they'll have to take a bike from a teammate.
54 kilometres an hour they are now clocking as the peloton races to the finish, and this is in a semi-crosswind to pick up the strong wind behind them very, very shortly. 10.4 kilometres to go, or 6 miles indeed, and Gessing has come through in that white jersey as well, so he's also placed well, and he's riding high in the overall.
Yeah, Gessing is in seventh place at the start of the day, looking for 4 minutes and 20 seconds, but he's also the second place rider in the young jersey competition. Got a little bit of panic now. There's Jurgen van den Broek. A little bit further back, Denny Menschhoff. There's number 1, Alberto Contador. He was going to fight to stay at the front end of this main field. 10 kilometres to go now, and it's still Saxo Bank really dishing out the pain at the front end of this main field. Going backwards now, having done the job for the team. Jens Voigt, he was the one who really put his back into really starting to split up the main field. The way that this developed, I think everybody was very aware that there was going to be a change of direction. We did, because we drove this race route last night, and I think that's why most of the team contenders, most of the guys high up in the overall standings, have not been caught out.
Well, looking straight at the faces here now, Paul, the men at the top of the overall classification basically have got themselves into the first 8 or 9 positions of the peloton. So they were wise. They were expecting this to happen.
Well, everybody was probably doing the same thing as we did last night, having a check out of the wind direction, having a check out of the change in direction of the race route, and I think they were ready for this moment when all of a sudden they accelerated. I don't think any of the major contenders, Phil, have actually been caught out by this acceleration, but still Team Saxo Bank are very happy to dish out the pain at the front end of this pack.
They've chosen a hard end to the day as we race to Bourg-lès-Valence, but the whole point is they're keeping the yellow safely. They're worried about the traffic furniture as well, warning the yellow jersey to watch out. Team HTC Columbia have had their train broken up because they're being interrupted by the men who are fighting for the overall of this race.
Well, this was the tactic we expected to come from Team Saxo Bank. They have said they will look for every opportunity to get a little bit more time over Alberto Contador. But Contador, the longer he stays in second position overall, the more anxious he's going to get, because he'll probably cast his mind back to when Cadel Evans started the final time trial and thought he was going to overtake Alberto Contador, and Contador produced the time trial of his life to win the Tour on that occasion. So for the moment, it's important to keep locked together. Contador right in the wheel there of Andy Schleck.
This incredible metronome here, Cancellara, he's still on the front. Others are swinging off, but not this man. He is power driving it through. A move here, an attack. It might be Sylvain Chavanel who's gone. He's looked for a move. How he's found acceleration at this point of the race, and it rather upset the move by Bernard Eisel there for Team HTC Columbia.
Onto his wheel is Jaroslav Popovic. Popovic was on the ground yesterday. We didn't even think he was going to get back onto his bike and survive, but he saw the move by Chavanel. He's come straight across that gap.
Well, that was a good move by Chavanel, well spotted too by Popovic, but you saw the head shaking of Bernard Eisel because he was about to organise HTC train, which he's done at the back end of the peloton, but they've lost 2 riders up front at 7.5 kilometres to go.
Yes, but now Saxo Bank have turned off the gas at the front end of this main field, and it's been given over to HTC Columbia, and that big line there now is looking after the interests of Mark Cavendish. But you can be certain, Phil, that there's a battle for the wheel of Cavendish on the running down towards the finish line, because all of these guys, Pataki, Hushoff, Oscar Freire, they will all be looking to try and get into the wheel of the man from the Isle of Man.
And then we're looking here at the blue jersey of a man who's already won 2 stages of this year's Tour de France. He's having his greatest tour. He said he wants more. He's wore the yellow jersey as well on 2 occasions. This is life at the back here now. The champion Denmark, the Saxo boys, have done their job, but they're dropping off.
Well, they're all dropping off Paolo Tirolongo, but look at the length of this main field here. I don't think these 2 riders are going to go too far off the front end of the main field, because you've got to be an extremely special professional bike rider to hold off an organised chase by a team like HTC Columbia. Locked onto the wheel of Mark Cavendish, the green jersey of Thor Hushoff. Behind Hushoff, it's Pataki. Behind Pataki, it looks as if we've got Tyler Farrer in about 4th or 5th position behind the green jersey.
Well, the wind has pinned the riders to the left. The 2 escapees couldn't cope with it. The green jersey of Hushoff has hooked up with the Express Terrain from HTC Columbia. Even our cameraman couldn't find the race then, but look at the back of the race. They are really being whipped around like the tail end of the train they are.
Well, look at the speed, though. 60 kilometres an hour, 37.5 miles an hour. There is Pataki just shooting round the corner there. We're just at 6 kilometres to go now.
And Christian Knies, the champion of Germany, has got Gerald Cholik into his slipstream to try and take him to the front. Everybody believes there's a chance for them. Well, at least they don't respect Mark Cavendish. They're not going to give him a stage win without a fight.
Well, there's a little bit of discord here now. There's a bit of disorganisation as other teams are coming to the front to get involved with the lead out for the sprinters. And now, I feel it looks as if it's turning over to the advantage of Team Lamprey.
Well, I'll tell you, we've seen some great sprints, but Paul, the speed of this peloton right now, it really isn't the place to be if you're nervous, because now Lamprey has come through. This is the Dolto, the big man on Lamprey. Now it's his turn to lift the pace. They're looking for Pataki, of course, #1 down there. The man has won the Tour de France the last 2 times he's ridden it, slowly but surely being washed down the field.
Well, a little further back as well, Lance Armstrong, number 21. This is what's happening at the back end of the main field, but nobody has got real control over the front end of the peloton. And let me remind you, Phil, that just at 1 kilometre to go, there's that very nasty little chicane. It's a right-hander followed by immediately a left-hander, and then a straight 1 kilometre crack to the line. You need to keep the pace nice and high, otherwise this could be a very chaotic sprint once again.
4.8 kilometres to go. The British cyclist in his first Tour for Cervelo, Jeremy Hunt, has now hit the front here and will stay as long as he can possibly stay. But Lamprey are looking the better organised at the moment. The Milram boys are looking to bring through Cholik. The Lamprey for Pataki. On the far right, it's Cavendish's squad.
Well, there's a lot of teams getting organised. Look at that, the black jerseys of Team Sky. They're coming forward. They're thinking about their man, Edward Bosenhagen. He has put in some good sprints. He's finished second on the stage of the Tour so far, as Jez Hunt, now 2-time British national champion in the past, has come to the front. Lying in the wings, though, it's the Team Lamprey for Alessandro Pataki, but still not disorganised over on the right-hand side is HTC Columbia. You can see big Johan van Summeren with the orange shirt, orange helmet on there. He's looking out for Tyler Farrer.
4 kilometres left to ride. This is an unusual view, I must say. I don't know where the camera is, but these are riders now in the spot of bother here. This is Fabian Cancellara, who has now dropped off the back as they've gone under that 4 kilometres at the front. 3.7 kilometres to go, and it looks as though the Pataki's team has got themselves organised. But on the left of the road, Cavendish's team also well organised. Sky are coming into the mix with the black jerseys.
Well, bumping and barging now. You can see Mark Cavendish, number 4 in that line. Not too far behind him, Tyler Farrer. There is Julian Dean. Dean, for the moment, riding behind his team leader, Tyler Farrer. Now the swing off now. The man from Lamprey's done the job. Each of these teams are waiting for the time when they're going to turn up the gas for the final moment. This is the lead out now from Team Sky. Excuse me, Bernard Eisel says, can you get out of the way here? It's getting a little bit short of space.
Yes, Bosenhagen is the third man here, and the team riders are black. They go under 3 kilometres to go now. Well, Pataki's team have done it right. Pataki must be feeling very, very good for them to ride like this. That's interesting, Paul. 2 HTC boys of Cavendish have split up the Pataki train there.
There is Hushoft. He's got himself onto the wheel of Alessandro Pataki. The kind of sprint that Alessandro Pataki likes is exactly the same as Mark Cavendish. He wants his team to be in control. We're looking at 62 kilometres an hour here, average speed for the main field. That's 38.5 miles an hour. What kind of speed are we going to record in the final finishing straight? Will we top 80 kilometres an hour today? With a tailwind like this, we might.
We are going to see steam coming out of these guys' ears as they race towards the town. Now they're still trying to get Tyler Farrer from America in frame as well on those orange jerseys. They're diving in every direction here, but now HTC Columbia seem to be getting themselves a little bit better organised.
Well, they know how to do it. The first man for HTC there, you can see, is Tony Martin. Behind Tony Martin, it's Bernard Eisel. Behind him, it's Mark Cavendish, who's just got in front of him Mark Renshaw, the lead-out man, who is turning out to be the lead-out man of the world currently.
Looked like it was Serge Powells there who's just swung off the front for the Sky team. He's done a big turn at the front. It's now going to be Pataki's team versus Cavendish's team. They are going shoulder to shoulder. That's he who his nerve lasts longest will survive. And look at Thor Hushoft in the green jersey. He could lose that jersey to Pataki tonight if he's not close on his wheel when he finishes.
Well, he's right on his wheel. He's locked on it currently. They're not too far, 400 metres away from this little chicane.
Here we
This
go.
is it. It's a right right-hander, followed by a left-hander. Let's hope everybody gets around there nice and safely. Once they get around there, they will see the Flamme Rouge. Still organises HTC Columbia, but still right in there with the mix. You can see Pataki. There is Oscar Freire in the orange as they go under 1,000 metres to go.
It doesn't get much better than this for a sprinter as they turn under the kilometre to go. We're now at 750 metres to go. The big lead out is in place for Mark Cavendish, but can he be launched at the line like he so often is? As Tyler Farage being moved up here, and they're all getting very tired at the same time. Farage got second teammate who is behind. They're trying to get Renshaw through to launch Cavendish. Now it's up to Renshaw. Mark Renshaw kicks, but they're shoulder to shoulder towards the line. Cavendish is getting out of the mix here. He's going to have to come on the right of our picture. Now he goes, and Pataki goes on the left. But Mark Cavendish again makes it a formality. When he sees the finish, he is absolutely impossible to beat. Mark Cavendish gets his 13th victory in a Tour de France, and he makes it look so easy.
It was so easy, but there was a lot of moving heads in that run up to the finish line. Mark Renshaw was using some track skills to make sure he had plenty of space for his man Mark Cavendish coming up there. I think Pataki just got across the line there in second place. He may well have gained enough points there to maybe steal the green jersey away from Thor Hushoff, who was a little bit further back down the pack, and I think Farah ended up in the third place across the line.
Well, it was a blanket finish, but there was no doubt as soon as Renshaw launched Mark Cavendish, there was no other rider in the competition today. As he gets maximum points for the green jersey, that'll move him up tonight. So he's won his third stage of the Tour de France today, this year, and his 13th in history.
Let's have a look at this one more time. Just watch this. This is serious argy-bargy. You've got Julian Dean trying to lean on Mark Renshaw. Renshaw says, come on, get out of the way. You can't play that game with me. I've ridden on the track. I know how to do this kind of stuff. He slips back now, Julian Dean out of the way. And this is the moment when Renshaw goes out of the way. And there you can see, in fact, Renshaw is blocking Tyler Farah a little bit. I'm not sure if he's going backwards. The referees might have a quick look at that.
You may
Cavendish is clean.
You may find here that Mark Renshaw will be penalised for those actions on Julian Dean because he was moving off his line and Dean wasn't.
Well, that was Rojas came across the line in fourth place there, but that was a little bit of nastiness between Julian Dean and Mark Renshaw from HTC Columbia. Robbie McEwen got up there in fifth place. Thor Hushoff, Phil, was way down in seventh place, so I'm going to have a quick look at my rule book to see if there's a change there, because the numbers drop down very rapidly from first to second down to seventh.
There will be. I'm pretty sure he's lost the green there. Mark Cavendish wins the stage. Pataki gets second. Tyler Farrar, brilliant third in all the circumstances. Rockhass fourth. Robin McEwen still there in fifth place. He also closes in on the green jersey again.
Well, that was a dramatic sprint, and that's the way these sprints are becoming so very difficult. And no real change in the overall standings, though, because everybody finished in the same time as Mark Cavendish. Schleck still leading this race ahead of Alberto Contador. Sammy Sanchez, the Olympic champion, still up there in third. Denny Menchoff quietly there in fourth place. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. Levi Leipheimer is up there in sixth place, while Ivan Basso is running out the top 10.